Happy Chilly Monday to you. It's the George Show, 710 KNUS. My name is George Brauchler. I don't know if you know this, but there's some rain outside. If you don't know it, open a window, go outside. There's some drizzle everywhere, at least in the metro area where I've been. 68 degrees is what they claim the high will be today. As you know, that is also a huge departure from what they were saying last week. At this point, I feel like you blame it on climate change or whatever. Becoming a meteorologist, I think Billy and I right now could probably predict as well as anyone. Showers and cooler today. Tomorrow it climbs to 75 with few afternoon storms. Then we go mostly sunny on Wednesday with 78 degrees. Then PM storms Thursday, showers on Friday, and then they claim, I mean, it doesn't even matter anymore. Once you get past Wednesday, they really, truly, it's just guesswork. Saturday and Sunday, hurricanes and earthquakes, I think, is what's on the agenda for the day. It's wet outside. Billy, it rained a lot. Like, I am not a guy that can sleep through the evening. I wish I could. But every time I woke up, it was raining outside.
Yeah, it was a lot of rain. It's good because that means I don't have to water the grass, which is wonderful.
Good. I think it's probably good for our drought-like conditions. Otherwise, maybe maybe this is the new climate change, right? Like we're going to have more precipitation. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Could wash away some of that marijuana smell off of the 16th Street Mall.
Until we're talking about the winter, then we don't want more precipitation.
No, but the snow thing is good for the tourist thing.
Yeah,
not that anybody can get up I-70 to go skiing, but if they could, it would be wonderful.
Yeah, but I get tired sometimes of shoveling all that fun touristy stuff out of my driveway. That gets a little old after a while.
No pay for that.
None at all.
Big weekend for area sports and other stuff, but you indicated you were trapped behind the mic. In fact, you said you even came into the studio over the weekend.
Yeah, I did. Hung with Pete during his 10 o'clock hour and Lou down the hall as well. He was there. It was good to see the group. Yeah, did some stuff 10 o'clock on Pete, but that was, it was a lot of radio. It literally is a blur. I did, 2 shows Friday, 3 Saturday, and then is it 4 or 5 Sunday? I'd have to go back and look.
You're a millionaire.
Yeah, no, Sunday was a rough one because it was get up at 3:30 in the morning. I'm on the air at 4, and I record 4 to 8, and then I'm taking a break and I'm going back to record between. The plan is to go back and record between about 10 and 2, and then be done hopefully in enough time to get to the football game and at least, watching. At that time, there was even a possibility of going, so I wasn't too sure if there are going to be extra tickets or not. So trying to get everything all wrapped up, and then I get a phone call from my boss, and she says, "Hey, someone's sick. Want to do another show?"
And you
sure,
said no.
Why not?
Oh, of course.
Of course. Yes. Yeah. So why not? So then after that, went back and recorded for another 4 hours. So I think that, I recorded for a grand total of 12 to 13 hours yesterday in total is what it took. And there were 2 different formats on the air that if you tuned in between 6 a.m. and yesterday morning and 1 a.m. this morning, there were only 5 hours that it was not your DJ. Every other hour, I was your DJ. Yeah, so it was a lot. But
when the paychecks roll in and you can count like the extra 6 figures every year.
Well, the nice part is that we're allowed to get chips when you go to Jimmy John's now. So that's nice.
But not the killer chip.
No, not at all. Talked about that too. The single killer chip.
Yeah, that's nuts, man.
Yeah, that is crazy. So it just was.
That was a product that was designed for lawsuits. I don't care how many disclaimers they put on that thing. You just knew something's bad's going to happen.
I talked about the idea of designing that type of a product that is intended to hurt people. That you're going to be doing something. Like, what does that take? That we're like, hey, let's do this. And if people use this properly, it's going to cause them pain and suffering. Like, wait a minute, hold on here. I want to be in that meeting. So talked a lot about that. Let's see.
Attorneys made a lot of money off of that too. No, we can draft a disclaimer that is foolproof.
Yeah, we can.
Nothing bad can happen. Oh, wait, did a kid get their hands on it?
Whoopsies.
Oh,
that's
what?
Not good. And then my son and my mom went to the TAPS fundraiser, which was Saturday night, which was really nice.
Were Bo and Lynn there?
Yes, they were. Yeah,
again,
they got to say hi to both
man.
of them, which is really neat. My son was super impressed with the entertainment they had that night.
That's cool.
Said it was just a wonderful job. And he came home with something that he spent his hard-earned money on and that he won at the auction.
Oh, well, no,
no, that's not that TAPS.
That's tips.
Yeah, that's
tips.
That's
different. Totally.
That's the cabaret downtown. Yeah. So he got involved in a bidding war with a guy during the a silent auction portion of the evening. And he said it's great because they've gone to, it's an app now that you get, and you get a text message.
Really? They don't do the
they do have a little bit of that, but they've really cut back on that because of just it's hard for participation. Yeah, well, it's hard for audience participation. There aren't a ton of people that are bidding, and the novelty wears off fairly quickly. So they only do a handful of those live auctions, and they do say it's entertaining. But after about the third one, you're like, okay, we've done this. And it was much tighter from what my son said as far as how the
What did he come away with?
He came away with a signed Patrick Surtain jersey.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, did a really good job. He said there were 3 jerseys. It was Jerry Jeudy, Nikola Jokic, and Surtain.
My gosh.
And he said, and at first, Mom was like, hey, what about the Jokic jersey? And my son looked at her and said, that's going to be in the thousands very quickly.
Oh my goodness.
And he was right. That thing went, it was a great.
The Surtain thing, if he can get his game back and, make himself the Hall of Fame player that.
Exactly. So, it's a good deal. And it was done on the Broncos Color Rush jersey. Now we have a couple of signed jerseys, but we don't have a Color Rush one yet. So that was kind of nice as well.
Man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it was really cool.
That's how he spent his money, huh?
Yeah. So now we got to get it mounted and get it up on the wall. Then it will sit next to his signed Von Miller jersey.
Oh, by the way, look at this, dude. You don't see it. I'm flying the colors right now.
You are. I saw that.
Little Von Miller t-shirt.
And my shirt's a little my polo, because one of us is following the dress code. We won't remember
this
who.
Jacket
is orange,
has a collar. Yeah, I've violated a lot of the things here.
But this polo shirt is orange as well. So yeah, we're kind of in
it's
sympathy.
almost in mourning though. I'm just like, God dang, man.
That was awful.
How do you listen? Chargers lost, Chiefs lost, right?
Yeah.
So everyone can go, oh, it's only one game. The problem is we're the only team that lost to a division rival at home.
Yeah.
And not just division rival, historic rival at home.
Yeah.
I mean, I still remember driving down from the mountains after a ski weekend with Dad and Mom and Eric. This is all pre-Lisa, and listening to Craig Morton and Kenny Stabler going at it. You know what I mean? Like the old Oakland Raiders and John Madden. But I mean, this thing goes back forever. You cannot start your tenure as a Broncos football coach dropping a game in which you tried some ridiculous onside kick as a gimmick to start the game. And then I know that everyone's out there piling on the kicker, and I'm 2 of those people, because how do you miss a PAT in the NFL? How do you miss that? But it's not like that would have ended the game differently, because the Raiders would have just kicked dang field goal at the end of the game and beat us anyway. Yeah. We had so many opportunities to win, and just like last year, we didn't.
He missed a field goal too, so he's responsible for 4 dropped points.
I do believe,
which is significant.
Yeah, listen,
that's significant.
I think we should be in the market for a new kicker. Let me make that clear.
We had a kicker.
Yeah,
we had the guy McManus.
I'm still not sure why we got rid of that guy.
If I had to guess, I don't think that Sean Payton would say this out loud, but if I had to guess money, he probably looked at the balance sheet and said, we're not paying that much for a kicker. Kickers aren't necessarily that important. And
dude,
at a
4 points, 4 points that guy left on the field. That's enough for at least a tie. That's enough to at least get us into. And you can't say, because if he'd kick the field goal, then we kick up. I don't know, but what a horrible way to start the season.
Horrible. And the thing that hurts me, and again, this is coming from the soccer guy, the guy who finds time to watch people run around and kick a ball. Field goal kicker is not a real position in football. And we lost to a guy who's not a real football player. Lost because of the guy that's not a real football player. He doesn't do any of the drills. He doesn't go through any of the other practices. His job is to kick the ball. And you can't get in the game and do that.
Dude, what a horrible
I'm sorry.
game.
Yeah, the thing is, I deal in a world where the people that are free kick specialists have to make the ball do ridiculous things that seem to bend physics at a time.
You've shown me a ton of these clips, man, where these guys are figuring out a way to get a ball to almost do a complete semicircle.
Yeah,
exactly. Like how are you doing that?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm looking at going. They spend hours and hours and hours perfecting that technique. You have to kick a ball in a straight line, and you can't manage that.
You're breaking my heart by saying it out loud.
Straight line. You're not asking it to do anything else other than go straight.
Ball. It's a different shaped ball.
It really doesn't matter. And that's the part, is you're getting paid a lot of money and you can't kick the ball straight. It hurts my head.
Listen,
just seriously.
On the other hand,
It's
And I
not a
should
real
have had you
position.
cue up the Fight CU Fight song because,
Oh yeah, that yes.
buddy, what a wonderful game.
That was neat. I got to see little bits and pieces. I was again doing the radio
What
thing,
a
but I'd come back in and
freaking wonderful game. It started off painful, like
a little bit.
when it was 0-0 going deep into the half, and I thought, man, what is going on here? Because the Huskers showed up. They want to play. Clearly, these guys play smash mouth football. That's old. That's original Big 8 football. And then when we turned it on, the only black mark on the whole game, in my opinion, was that last touchdown that we gave the Huskers. They brought in the backup quarterback, who's now going to probably be the third string quarterback based on that performance. He gives the ball up on the ground for reasons I don't really understand. And then the defense let the guy score. Otherwise, it was a shellacking. And
it was.
Man, I love that. I wanted there to be more shellacking.
That was wonderful. The fact it was Nebraska, that made me feel good. The longtime Colorado kid felt good that it was Nebraska that was having to take the punishment.
And listen, we have Nebraska fans and listeners. Jacqueline, I know you're listening.
Yeah.
Corey, I know you're listening. This has nothing to do with our love for you. That doesn't end.
The state's wonderful. The state football program.
But we can never, ever root for Nebraska.
Never.
It would be hard if Nebraska found a way to play the Raiders. It would be hard. I don't know what to do because they both can't lose.
Yeah. For me, it would be just, can Bain show up at the stadium and just destroy it?
You just have to root for injuries.
Yes,
at that
exactly.
Point. I mean, I know that sounds really heartless and unchristian, but there it is.
You know what was really cool is reading the stories after the game about the sports bettors and how they are taking a bath on CU because of all the action. And I think that's wonderful. And they're setting the lines so that they get equal money on both sides, and they're obviously doing a poor job because they said up to 24 hours before the game there were some big bets coming in on Nebraska on the underdog where guys were trying to make a lot of money. But they said all of the real solid action was on CU covering. And the idea, because the line was only 3 points when they hit kickoff. And that's a silly thing looking at what, Deion Sanders was doing.
I got ticks for me and the boys to go to the CU-CSU game this Saturday. And again, you just don't want them to look past it. But if you're CSU, especially based on the way you played in your home opener, and then you got a bye week, you've got to be thinking, what in the world is coming for us? We're going into Folsom Field with the now 18th ranked CU Buffs. Buddy, I don't know.
I don't know. But then again, if I'm the coach of CSU saying, Colorado did it to TCU, can you? And that's the story. If that's the story, I'm not believing it. But that's the story I'm telling the kids.
These guys.
I've also heard that they're bringing, ESPN is looking at bringing College Game
Day. Oh, it's coming.
To,
Game Day's coming to Boulder for the first time in like a year since like 96.
Yeah, I didn't hear what game it is, but I hear it's coming.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, epic stuff.
Now, again, if you're the guy responsible for making sure that Coach Prime inked that deal, so far,
my goodness, man. I mean, he may leave after this year. Who knows? Because maybe he leaves when Shedeur leaves, but Shedeur could leave. I don't know. I mean,
I think as long as he's having fun, because CU is such a unique college environment. There are a number of those across the country, and I honestly believe that Boulder creates one of the more unique college environments in our nation. And I think it is fun being there. And after he experiences the seasons here and realizes that winter really isn't that bad, I think he's going to be fine. I think that we may have him, I'm not saying long term, but I think we can have him 4 or 5 years before he moves on to something else. I think he'll at least be here that long.
I hope he also sees, like from Nick Saban's experience, that the ability to dominate or be long-term successful in college. And by the way, he's upended that apple cart with this whole portal thing, but he is such a force of nature that he draws people to him because he's a winner in a different kind of a way. But going to the NFL, it's different. Ask Lane Kiffin, ask Nick Saban, ask fill in the blank. Who's the dude from the Florida Gators who got fired for a whole bunch of other reasons, but he was awful. I'm having a Biden moment here.
Oh, but
Which,
NFL
by the way,
different.
a Biden moment is the term that will replace senior moment for the next generation.
Yes,
like, I'm going all Biden. I saw some clips of him out in Hanoi. Oh, buddy, I don't know what's going on. And by the way, I don't want to pile on like everything he said was gibberish. It wasn't. But there were times where he just ran out of gas. And when he runs out of gas, the words it's like word salad.
Yeah, it doesn't make
and then
any
he
sense.
and it's like, oh, come on, man. And then they just jump in over the top of him, come up. There's KGP. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for coming. That's the end of it. And then he kind of drifts off and wanders away into the dark. And it's like, please don't make any decisions about how strong America is based on its leaders, because golly geez. One other thing, neighbor issue. I'm going to air some neighbor.
Ooh,
new neighbor.
Okay.
New neighbor. And I've, because I'm doing some stuff in the basement, I have this dumpster.
Okay.
In the driveway, not on the street,
nice.
not like please come use me, in the driveway.
In the driveway.
And we're using this fantastic dude who does basements named George DeRose. He does Basements R Us. And I say that only because George is the father of one of Amanda's besties from high school. So
cool.
I didn't know, like, can I get a better deal here, better deal there? I'm like, I'm going to trust the dude, right?
Yeah.
Like, great kid, all this. So get him on board, and he brings this thing in. And then, I had maybe a month ago started pitching things into the dumpster. And then one day he comes over to check on the basement and stuff like that. How's it going? He's like, whoa. Is this your stuff in the back of in the dumpster? I go, yes. Is that a problem? He goes, it is. Here's why. You're paying for that dumpster.
Yeah.
Because I pay for that dumpster. And that means when it gets full and someone has to come and dump it, that has a cost to it, and it's not nothing.
It is significant.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea. I'm such a jerk. Let me get all this stuff and walk it down. There's some other construction going on that that's about, I don't know, 2 houses down, where whoever it is in the community was like, yep, you guys can continue to use this. We dump it every week. It doesn't matter.
Oh, nice.
Okay. And it's
wonderful.
But why walk 2 houses when you can just use the one in your driveway?
Yeah.
Well, here's the answer: money. So, okay. So I clean out some of the stuff. He hops in there. This good man hops in there and is like tamping down the boxes, tearing them apart to make more room. He says, listen, there's so much more coming out of your basement. He goes, I just need to. Okay. So, then I come back, I don't know, maybe it's a week ago, and somebody is pitching their trash in there, and it's like bags of trash. And I'm like, God, come on, man. Like, there's another two doors down in the street, like the one that says basically, you please. And I don't, so then I had been gone for a good chunk of yesterday, came back at night. Of course, I had to run. And by the way, I should tell you, it was supposed to be a 16-mile run. It turned out to be 10.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 26. Nailed that marathon.
No,
I am good.
No, there were times during the run where I thought, man, I feel really good.
Yeah.
That did not last. That feeling did not last for very long.
That was mile 1.
I continue to make the mistake of starting my runs too late in the morning, so that by the time, when it gets to be about 10 or 10:30, the heat becomes an issue.
I'll call you. I get up at 4. I'll call you.
No, please don't.
Sure?
I didn't. No, not on the weekend.
I
want
do
to
that
sleep
for
in,
you.
I just have to start earlier. I keep, it's so dreadful, the whole
4
idea
o'clock.
that, what am I doing? So I come home late. It's like 8 or 9 o'clock, something like that. It's already starting to drizzle. And the thing, I can see trash peeking over the top of this giant dumpster. And I'm like, son of a. So now I look at it, and it's Amazon boxes and Home Depot boxes, but dude's left his address on everything.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's the new next door neighbor.
Oh, geez.
So listen, I want to confess, I can have moments of rage.
Oh, yeah.
One of those boxes ended up face up, address showing, back in the dude's driveway. The rest of the boxes are littering the sidewalk in between our homes on the grass.
There we go.
Look, Billy, I'm going to admit this wasn't my strongest moment. I had thought, I'm going next door and I'm going to say something, but I'm like, I don't want that to be the 9 p.m. on a Sunday or 8 p.m., whatever it was. I'm not showing up to be like, hi neighbor. So
hey, you're a jackass.
Instead, I just
threw a litter. I like that.
And
a little more passive aggressive.
That was before the torrential downpour that turned it into a big pile of
that's
mush.
even better.
And I regret some of that decision, but some of it I don't. Not much, because in part, and again, we're probably going to be besties moving forward, or not. But the thought process of somebody just eyeing the dumpsters like 2 doors down and looking at mine and thinking, well, this one's a lot easier.
Well, the thing for me is that if the dumpsters didn't exist, what would he do?
He's got his own trash cans
so
too.
That's the thing for me, is that the idea is you're taking advantage of things that other people are paying for without necessarily checking on if that's okay. We have wonderful neighbors. I mean, we have just we feel very lucky that all the people around us are just such wonderful people.
And long-term neighbors.
Yeah, long-term.
Yeah.
And people next door to us, every once in a while, they'll get a small dumpster, or they were doing some remodeling and had a couple of those big, canvas, bag things out front. They said, listen, if you have anything that you want to throw away, go right ahead. And I told them, I said, listen, I will wait until the day in which you're going to get those removed. If there's room, I'll be happy to, but I'm not going to take up space that you guys need in there. And they're like, oh, thank you very much. So they came over the day of, they said, hey, tomorrow morning they're going to be gone. If you have anything you can fit in there, go right ahead, which is, again,
so nice.
Yeah, they're wonderful, wonderful people. It's, in fact, they came over this weekend.
You have that relationship where you have the mutual respect to be like, hey, and I mean, even had the dude just come over at any time and said, yeah, I just want to be clear, man. Is it okay if I throw my stuff? And I'd have been like, oh, thank you so much for asking. No,
unfortunately.
Here's why.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's going to cost me money. But instead it was just sort of this attitude of, well, it's very easy for me to dump it in there. And
it's
I guess
obvious for everybody.
Yeah. We'll just bring it up some other day.
Yeah.
Now it's turned into a relationship risking move on my part. Although I don't want to take responsibility for it, because I feel like my reaction, although extreme, was somewhat predictable.
Absolutely, because it's not his stuff. And speaking of weird things that happen in the neighborhood, our neighbor just this weekend came over to our house and said, hi, are these spoons yours? We were pulling weeds in the backyard and kind of buried in some of the, the stuff back here. Are these your spoons? And I'm like, yes, those are our spoons. And
how did your spoons get in there buried in their back?
I have 4 children. I don't know when this happened, but this has got to be at least several years ago, because of where she told me she found them and how they were buried. So yeah, at some point or another, my partially feral children were like, done with that, over the fence, and just left it there. Again, I have so many questions. It explains the bedrooms a lot, though. It makes a lot more sense.
Good kids. Love those kids.
I found a bowl with 2-day-old macaroni and cheese in one of the rooms the other day.
Okay, now I don't get that. Now in the car, I'll
ridiculous.
put stuff in the car behind the driver's seat, as sort of I don't want to look at it, but when I fill up with gas, I found something tucked under the seat, and I remember a lot of it is first you have to go through your mind, like, how did it get there?
Yeah.
What was that originally? Why did it end up there? And really, I had no good answers for a lot of the things, but it ultimately worked out.
I hate to say it, that drives me nuts. I don't do that at all, and I get all over
you
the
love
kids.
The cars, man.
Yeah, and
you
I get all over the kids.
Cars.
Like, what are you doing with the trash sitting here in the? I hate to say it. I've even had conversations with my wife, going, "This is not a giant purse. It's not what this is. There's things of these that need to get out, and we don't. This is not a well.
That's not bad. Listen, folks, we probably should have told people earlier on that we're scheduled, and I say scheduled.
Yeah, scheduled.
To have Mark Levin on the radio at the top of the 7 o'clock hour. Some people may have squealed with glee. Others may have just turned the station off.
Now,
I don't know.
I don't know if it will happen, because I have not heard back from them about how we're going to connect. They've confirmed it, but I have yet to have any sort of information.
It's going to happen. He's a big time guy, Billy. He might let us know while he calls in.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
I have no clue.
But we'll have him for a little bit at the top of the 7, which is great. We're going to have a congressional candidate who I think is a pretty awesome fella, who's going to be running in the 8th congressional against Dr. I'll pay myself a salary from my campaign funds, Caraveo.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. Not illegal, by the way, not illegal at all, but just sort of what you do.
So many questions.
When you're a doctor,
might as well.
You're not making enough.
No,
really.
not at all, obviously.
I still think you and I should have run for mayor and gotten matching funds to pay for ourselves for a salary. But neither of us live in Denver, which turns out to be a little bit of a hitch.
Which is weird. Living in Denver,
stop you from being a judge.
No, living in Denver needed. Paying yourself out of the campaign funds, that's perfectly fine. It's weird the lines that we've drawn in this, but okay.
Nonetheless, we'll have Gabe on. And then in the 9 o'clock hour, we're going to have the deputy chief of police for Boulder. He's a friend and also a superhero when it comes to police work. You may remember him from July the 20th, 2012. My head is stuck in September. His name's Steve Redfearn. Listen, and I know we've gone into the 6:30 thing, but I don't want people to think that we aren't cognizant of the fact that today marks the anniversary. Anniversary is too strong a word. The memorial,
remembrance, maybe?
Remembrance of September the 11th.
Do it, yeah.
And I remember last year we did this "Where Were You" thing, and it's not that I wouldn't do it again. I don't know. I mean, I remember it. I think about it. It changed my life. It sent me to a country I would have never, ever, ever, never gone to for any good reason before that. But in fact, I'll just say this, that maybe one of the most memorable September 11th, other than the actual one. Buddy, that's 22 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean,
yeah,
come on, man.
I know.
I was barely 30 in my 30s. Geez.
Yeah.
Was on the 10-year anniversary of September the 11th. I was in Tikrit, Iraq at a place called Cobb Spiker. And I remember that our special bonus that day from the command was you can have 4 hours to do whatever, just 4 hours of you time. It had to be scheduled stuff. I mean, that's just the days of the week and the hours of the day were largely irrelevant when you were deployed. You know what I mean? Even on the base.
Yeah.
And so it was like, you can have 4 hours of you time. And I remember the staff judge advocate, a guy named Randy Kirkvold, super great, wise guy. One of those guys that you take for granted at the time, what a great leader he is, because he's not your John Wayne kind of typical George C. Scott Patton. He's not that kind of leader. But in retrospect, you look back and you say, damn, that guy was really good.
Yeah.
His wisdom was something that did not dawn on me until the rear view mirror, till I started getting into positions like his. But he showed up at my CHU, my containerized housing unit, and said, hey, what are you doing with your 4 hours? I'm like, probably just going to lay in bed here for a bit and, maybe go work out or something. What can you do? Yeah. It's not like I'm going to go take in the sights.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to hop on a bird and fly
go
up
to Disneyland
and fly up to the Tigris.
Exactly.
And what can you do?
Yeah.
So, and he's like, no, come with me. We're going to go to a PX. We had this teeny tiny little post exchange, but they had American flags there.
Oh.
And so we bought up the remaining store of their American flags. So maybe a total of like 6 or 7. And he said, come with me. We went to the one flagpole they had on the entire base. And if you remember, Cobb Spiker sits right outside of Tikrit. It was Saddam's kind of crown jewel in his military. This was like the Air Force Academy, from very, very, very precious thing. And so we ran each and every flag up the pole, just kind of in silence until they were all done.
Oh, nice.
We did this thing, we folded them up, and he's like, now we're going to go back. And he goes, I got these certificates and stuff. I'll sign yours. He said, but I want you to give this to the people back home that you care about, and let them know that on the 10-year anniversary of September the 11th, the events that ultimately led to you be here, you ran the American flag up in Tikrit, Iraq, which was Saddam's hometown, and all this other stuff.
Oh, wow.
And so, I probably still have one more, but I gave one to, father-in-law, my dad, my brother, that kind of thing. And it was just, I don't know, standing there watching us run the flag up in the middle of this thing was surreal. It was like,
that is,
just the two of us. There was no one. It wasn't a big ceremony, and he'd run it up, then I'd run it up. And I thought, man, in my youth, I would have never, ever once predicted being attacked and having the World Trade Center buildings destroyed, and then end up in some faraway land doing, I don't know. It was just a little bit crazy. The rest of them, I mean, September 11th, big day. And I know they're going to read the names out in New York City tonight or today, as they always do, but I don't know, whatever, Billy. I don't know if you get something, but
no, it's again, nothing that cool at all. It's the odd thing is that, on that day, Pete and I were on the air together. So there's that kind of that experience of when you get this sort of front row seat to history at times because of what you're doing. That's always kind of stuck with me. And it also has stuck with me how much things have changed afterwards, not only just with our foreign policy, but our politics. And I have got, 2 kids in the house that were not alive when it happened. And so seeing their perspective and what they look at is really interesting. It's really different. And I understand why sometimes they don't put as much emotion behind it that you and I do, because I didn't understand the emotion that my parents had for Pearl Harbor because of the age. And that's part of it. And so I kind of try to look at it through that lens. It's difficult.
So far away. You're right, man. It's just so far away. It's hard to wrap your mind around. For them, I guess this is their Pearl Harbor.
In many ways, yeah. And just how things change, and they don't really have an understanding or a perspective. My oldest son, he was baby when it happened, but it still kind of hit him a little bit because he grew up in a lot of the really big remembrances and things. And so, it means more to him than it does to the rest of them. But it is strange. Pete was asking the question over the weekend that have we forgotten? And I think in some ways, I'm not sure. It's weird that we talk about never forgetting, but in some ways, because of how our society functions, we have incredible short-term memory loss. And I think in some ways that parts of what went on with September 11th are being forgotten. Parts of the idea that, coming together as a country and the unity that was founded after that, I think that we have gotten probably as far afield from that feeling about America as we've had in my lifetime. It is probably almost 180 degrees away from where we were on that day. And that worries me. It worries me about the direction that we're headed when we think that internally, the people internally are providing more of a threat to our nation than the threats externally.
I'm also not convinced, man, that because you were there. And you're right. I hadn't even given this thought. When I was coming off of active duty after my first mobilization after September 11th, is when we found out we were pregnant with Amanda.
Oh, wow.
And so none of my kids also have ever lived in a world in which there were the Twin Towers, and other than what took place on December the 7th, 41, that we were pretty secure. But I don't even think if it happened again today, we would unify the way we did. And you were there, and all these people listening to 710 KNUS were there too. There was that kind of unity that just happened. You didn't really have to talk about it. All of a sudden, we were all just Americans for a moment. And it was awesome. I don't know if that would happen again, man. If somebody attacked us now,
it's a really good
I don't know if we would unify the same way. If it would still be an us versus them, the apologists for whoever attacked us versus the, hey, it's your fault. We're all about the blame now instead of I don't know. It does feel in many ways like it's more than 22 years ago. It feels like it's a country ago.
Oh, it does. Yeah. It seems like we're in a very, very different place. That's interesting. The idea that would we react the same way? And I've always had this theory, and I think we've talked about it on the air, that I call it's my Star Trek theory, that if the blue people show up on the planet, all of a sudden we will discover world peace, because we will go, you know what? We may have some differences, but screw them. They're blue.
Right.
Have
They're
you
more
seen it?
different than
They're
we are.
Blue. And so I think that's it. So I'm curious as to whether or not that dynamic would still hold inside of the country. It's a good question.
Very Independence Day. Something like that.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
I don't know if we've blown past the record unintentionally. Buddy, I don't know how much time I've left you for the good.
So we'll find out.
If that's the right word. Let's going to cut away for a break. Come back. We're going to start up the week the way we should, formally, with the Thorpe Report, and then the informal, very, very questionable, both taste-wise and ethically, the You Choose the News, whatever time we have left. Stick around. George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history, with nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher. You'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com. Imagine.
George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. I got to rush to Billy, who's got to rush through all the good stuff here on the Thorpe Report. Billy?
Yeah, it looks like the sky's going to be leaking today. It'll happen this morning and then this afternoon. Highs in the higher 60s, mostly mild. Some more rain leaking from the sky tomorrow. Highs around 74. Same thing's going to happen on Wednesday. Police in Aurora are investigating a possible gun battle that led to a double shooting in an apartment complex early Sunday morning. They were at the Fitzsimmons apartment complex's Nome Street right around 1:15 in the morning. They found 2 gunshot victims when they arrived, both women. They were grazed with a bullet by a man who was shot in the leg. Both transported to the hospital. Officers discovered a number of shell casings, possibly indicating exchange of gunfire, but no charges. Nobody's been arrested. They don't even have a suspect. Police in Boulder arrested a man who allegedly went on a burglary spree during the game. They arrested a Kansas man, 50-year-old Patrick Sean Gillespie, on several charges, including 5 counts of burglary and theft. They think he started right around 7:30 in the morning as people were going over to the CU football game, and he targeted residents on University Hill. It was only when he tried to break into an occupied home on 10th Street that they caught him. Since July, our city has doubled sheltering efforts due to the number of migrants that are arriving. In July, around 500 people in city shelters. Now it's over 1,100, and they're kind of struggling to figure out how they're going to keep them and shelter them. In July, there was an encampment of 30 migrants that were homeless. Now they think they're down to about 10 homeless migrants, but again, struggles for where they're going to house them because the numbers keep growing. This weekend, Town of Lyons hosted a flood remembrance ceremony in Sandstone Park. It's been a decade since the historic rainfall caused widespread destruction. Remember, the Town of Lyons was carved into 6 separate islands when more than 17 inches of rainfall fell over a 48-hour span.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Colorado has a new political party. The Colorado Secretary of State has... they've got the officially designated Colorado Center Party. It is our state's 7th minor political party, and this is the last time you're going to hear of them having any relevance. Just saying. Attorneys for Colorado, guy who's suing MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, wants him to answer more questions because of his conduct during depositions. Eric Coomer, former director with Denver-based Dominion Voting Systems, is suing Lindell for defamation after suggesting he's a traitor.
Have you heard, by the way, Lindell's videoed response to this thing, where he was interviewed? And holy smokes!
Yeah, exactly. He keeps digging the hole. And
I'm like, goodness.
Yeah, maybe when you're being sued for defamation and libel,
he said just one thing. He's yelling. I said just one thing. It's like that's all it takes.
That is all it takes. Yeah. Also, we talked about earlier, Colorado jumped 4 spots to number 18 in the Associated Press college football poll after beating Nebraska, and the Raiders scored a touchdown that gave our Broncos a 1-point loss. That's all I got. That's it.
Buddy, let's cut away for a break here. I want to give you as much time as possible to get to the uplifting stuff before we get to potentially the Mark Levin, the great one, who's supposed to be on this show at the top of the 7 o'clock hour for us, 9 o'clock hour for him. Let's see if it happens. Cut away for a quick break. George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. You choose the news, William.
Yes, sir. It is that time of the morning where we play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show. You choose the news. We have scoured the interwebs over the course of this weekend, well, at least as far as you know, to find really stupid stories about us humans, giving them ridiculous headlines to play this fake radio news game. Without any further ado, because we have adoed enough. Now, sir, here are your choices. Headline number 1, how long do you wait? Headline number 2, contest we all dream of winning. Headline number 3, maybe they like me. And headline number 4, 2 words for you, poverty simulation. All righty, here are your choices yet again. How long do you wait? Contest we all dream of winning. Maybe they like me. And 2 words, poverty simulation. Your choice, sir.
Poverty simulation, please.
Poverty simulation. Residents of Highland Park, it's a suburb of North Chicago, where a lot of the rich people live, have been invited to a wonderful poverty simulation. Simulation. Yes, participants will be able to, over the course of 2.5 hours, experience what a, quote, month in poverty feels like. Together, they will increase resources for those living in poverty to create a more resilient health, human, and education sector. We hope you will join us. So, yes, the rich people of Highland Park, suburb of Chicago, are going to get together in a poverty simulation where they'll pretend to be poor for 2.5 hours. Where would you spend your time? They're doing a poverty simulation for 2.5 hours. They're learning.
Have they asked Mayor Mike Kaufman to help?
Because what they're doing, I mean, you'd think they might go to a poor neighborhood and impoverish, but no, we don't want to do that. We can't have the rich people go into the poor neighborhoods. This poverty simulation would be held at the Highland Park Country Club. Yes. You have an invitation to pretend to be poor while at the country club. That seems definitely like it makes a lot of sense. Yes, that the people who decided
that's
to do
where
this
I'd go
and organize this.
Why wouldn't you want to do that?
I know. Where should we take them? Where can we take the rich people to pretend to be poor? Here at the country club.
Great.
Idiots. Okay, here's your other choice. How long do you wait? Contest we all dream of winning, or maybe they like me.
Maybe they like me.
Maybe they do like me. That's what a woman said in Salt Lake City after she found out everybody was pulling over their cars as she was driving by. Wow. She had just bought a used black Dodge Charger and thought, maybe everybody likes me. But that's when she noticed the social media post from a local law enforcement agency. The agency is saying that this car, which looks remarkably like hers, has been suspected of police impersonation. And that is when she discovered the red and blue flashing lights on her car.
No, what?
Yes.
They were going and she didn't know?
She discovered that when she turns on the headlights, the previous owner had altered the fog lights to flash red and blue. She contacted law enforcement because the time in which they're looking for the car is not when she owned it. But she said, hey, I just purchased this. Maybe this is the car you're looking for. And they said, aha, it's exactly the car you're looking for. And they're now tracing it backwards to contact the previous owner.
Still pretty cool feature, by the way.
It is. I thought, why would you tell anybody?
When you have the fake cops all the time, we'd have them even in Jeffco.
Yeah.
The word was no plea bargains ever. Crush them, jail them for as long as possible.
Oh, I love that idea.
Oh, yeah. Crush them.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, final choice this morning. How long do you wait, or contest we all dream of winning?
The contest we all dream of winning.
This is a contest we all dream of winning, but we'd have to go to Montenegro to do it. Currently, they're having a contest to find their laziest citizen. It started as a joke about 12 years ago because there was a joke about people in Montenegro being lazy, so they tried to find the laziest citizen in town. And the contest has slowly grown. Last year, the winner laid down and didn't do anything for 117 hours.
What?
Now, there are 7 contestants left, and they're moving into day 22. 22 days of people laying there doing nothing. They asked the contestants, how do you do this? And they said, it's easy. We just lay there and people bring us all the stuff we want. That's not a contest. That's my dream vacation. But from now on during the NFL season, when my wife complains I'm not doing anything, I'm just going to tell her I'm in training.
Yeah, you're just going to lay down like our kicker did. Listen, when we come back, there's a really good chance, question mark, that we're going to have the great one, Mark Levin, George Brauchler, 710, KNUS. George Brauchler with you here at the 7 o'clock hour. Listen, we had planned to have the great one on, Mark Levin. He's got a new book out. It's called The Democrat Party Hates America. It's a very, very obscure sounding title. You really can't tell what he's getting at there. It's very, very nuanced. I'm kidding. That is not Mark Levin. I was really looking forward to having him on this morning. My presumption is dude's so busy that they've got him spread out all over the planet Earth by phone and Zoom and all that other stuff. In fact, Billy, see if there's any chance once we finally get it, probably won't be today. Maybe we could do it by Zoom. So the Rumble and the YouTubes, maybe, Crowley's suggestion that maybe we get that on. And by the way, the sound is infinitely better when it's on the Zoom and the WhatsApp and all that. I don't know why, but it is. So we're going to shift fire here. At the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to have on Gabe Evans. He is a candidate for the 8th Congressional District, along with Scott James, both Republicans, vying to take on Dr. Pay Myself with Campaign Funds Caraveo. There's also sort of an interesting development. Do you remember when we had on D-Will? And we're going to get Dave back on here. I just don't know which day. Maybe tomorrow. I hope tomorrow. And he had brokered this awesome deal with the Libertarians who kind of upset the Barb Kirkmeyer apple cart, right? Like if you look at the math and you just use common sense, Caraveo should not be in Congress right now. It should be Congresswoman Barb Kirkmeyer. But that didn't happen because the Libertarian jumped in. So Dave negotiated a way to keep the Libertarian out as long as we were, nominating legit conservatives and stuff. And then the guy that was the Libertarian candidate decided to run as not a Libertarian. So the Libertarians are like, yep, we're all in bed with you on this one. But then the guy was just like, screw it, I'm going to run as something else anyway. So it's like, come on, man. I mean, we keep shooting ourselves in the feet here over this idea of purity or something. And then but my hope is Gabe Evans, Scott James, these guys can put together a campaign that once they're nominated, they just run away with it, especially coming into the 2024 election. Something else I wanted to talk to you about. If you have not heard this sound or read about this, it kind of just happened down in a place called New Mexico. Now, New Mexico, you'd think it was part of the West, that it used to be Republican country. That was probably true at one point. It hasn't been for some time now. In fact, at one point, they had a former district attorney as their governor. She may have lost her mind, though, a little bit, and she's no longer the governor. Now they have a different governor in place. And one of the interesting things about what this governor is encountering is that there are a great number of shootings. Does this sound familiar at all? A great number of shootings in and around the big city of Albuquerque. That's Q, the Q. If you've ever been down there, I was just down there, man, a few months ago. Remember that one? We did the little spring break sort of trip out. And it wasn't spring break. It was whatever that trip was out there to Arizona. I had to drive through the Q, stayed there, all that other stuff. Well, there's been a ton of shootings that have taken place in Albuquerque. And the New Mexico governor, whose name is Michelle Lujan, just lost my mind here and it escapes me. It's Michelle Lujan Grisham, on Friday issued an executive order declaring an emergency, and then get this, suspending the right to carry firearms in public in and around Albuquerque. Kind of a big deal. And what it was a response to was, in addition to all the other shootings that they've had, an 11-year-old boy was shot and killed outside a baseball park last week. So the governor, quick to act, issued a 30-day ban on open and concealed carry of firearms in Albuquerque. The decree came, let's see here, after a statewide public health emergency. She declared gun violence a statewide public health emergency and said, quote, the rate of gun deaths in New Mexico increased 43% from 2009 to 2018. I'm not sure that's way off of what's going on in other Western cities, and I need to go pull up the old numbers from Denver to find that out. But she says when New Mexicans are afraid to be in crowds, to take their kids to school, to leave a baseball game, when their very right to exist is threatened by the prospect of violence at every turn, something is very wrong. By the way, heads up, she's a Democrat. She's also got two quotes that I want to play here for you. This is getting national news in my opinion, for how strident this executive order is and the way that she talks about it. And we're going to have a conversation about it here. So this is New Mexico Governor Grisham right here.
So effective immediately, no person other than a law enforcement officer or licensed security officer shall possess a firearm, either openly or concealed, within cities or counties, averaging 1,000 or more violent crimes per 100,000, and more than 90 firearm-related emergency department visits.
Now, a couple things about that. One, do you think that it is actually targeting and will be effective against the people who are inclined to use firearms to commit violence against other people or to just commit other violent crimes in general? Are there armed robbers, home invasion burglars, gang members, other thugs out there who are going to hear, hey, folks, big ban on the guns? And in part, what Governor Grisham is saying is, well, I'm empowering now law enforcement to be able to take action. Because now if they see open concealed firearms, they know that they have a violation of law. In fact, what I'm interested in knowing, and I just don't know the answer to this, is, oh, here it is right here. The temporary gun ban would be enforced by state police, and violators would be subject to a fine of up to $5,000. Who says? Is that baked into the statute that if you just issue an executive order? Now, I know here in the state of Colorado, our executive orders, when they're violated, especially when it comes to things like the mask mandate, that was like a misdemeanor violation, punishable by a fine only. Potential jail, depending upon whether or not the order came down from like the state health department versus the local health department. But this is a $5,000 fine enforced by state police. Unbelievable. All by executive order because there's a declared emergency. But wait, there's more. Somebody asked her. Someone had the guts to ask her, hey, isn't there something that rhymes with the Constitution?
I can invoke additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute.
Come again? Come again? No provision of the Constitution is intended to be absolute? Maybe, but and she said, including my oath. What does that mean? I mean, at the time that she took the oath, unless she had her fingers crossed, I don't remember an asterisk that says, unless something really bad happens, then in that case. In fact, the executive orders issued by the governor in our state, while they may have been violative of the Constitution, they just can't supersede the Constitution. And you'll remember he tried that along with the Secretary of State. Remember when they tried to do something to extend the amount of time? Oh, no, I know what it was. They were going to change the rules so that you could petition remotely. You, instead of having to get physical signatures on a petition ballot to get on the ballot, you could do it remotely. You could do it somehow digitally. And the Supreme Court of our own state mercifully came back and was like, nah, you can't just make that. That's not something you can just do by rule. That's not just something you can do by executive order. And the governor got slapped down a couple times as well, too. But this right here seems really strident, doesn't it? Is this another one of those Democrat flailing around sort of, I've just got to do something? In fact, there's another part of the clip I don't have available for you, but there's another part of the clip where she says, well, I need to do something. I need to use whatever powers I have, apparently or not have, to do something here to stop gun violence. What do you think about that? 303-696-1971. Here's some Colorado statistics that somebody sent me. We had a murder rate in 2012 of 2.68. In 2022, it's 6.45. It says Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI, is the source of these numbers. So from 2012, our increase was, good Lord, looks like 115%. That is now almost triple what New Mexico has seen here. Remember, the basis for her was from 2009 to 2018. They saw a 43% increase. That's a 9-year period. From 2013 to 2022, which is a 10-year period, 115% increase. Can you imagine the governor of the state of Colorado coming forward and saying, I'm just going to simply issue an executive order that for 30 days, I'm going to ban open and concealed carrying of firearms. How do you do that? What do you do to a governor who oversteps their bounds? Well, there's one thing that's taking place right now. There's a group called the National Association for Gun Rights, and one of the members who lives in Albuquerque, they've already filed a lawsuit, I presume, in federal court, saying that this was violative of the Second Amendment and the Constitution. But this is the kind of thing that is so, in my opinion, so brazen that it has to be met with not just being smacked down by the courts, but how do you not seek to recall your governor for actions like this? Or maybe I'm overstepping my bounds. Is there some other answer from the governor? 303-696-1971. This to me highlights one of the great differences between the Democrats and the Republicans. And for the Democrats, we've seen this with the state legislature when it comes to gun laws. You have to be seen doing something. Just the flailing around, frenetic sort of, I've got to pass a law that touches on the word gun. I've got to do something. That is how we show that we're making a difference. And that's what's happening here. This governor has just all of a sudden decided, as a public health emergency, I'm going to declare firearm violence or something. I mean, I don't think she did anything about knives. I don't think she did anything probably about declaring the possession of marijuana or any other drugs that lead to poor decision-making or other health consequences in emergency. I'm pretty sure she didn't do that. But when it comes to the firearms, she has declared this to be a public health emergency. And now for 30 days in Albuquerque or any other community that apparently has this ridiculous crime rate, she's going to go ahead and suspend your Second Amendment rights, having declared, and listen to her words, not mine,
I can invoke additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute.
They're not intended to be absolute. They're not intended to be absolute. Who gets to make that decision about what that Second Amendment means? Certainly it's not a single individual, elected individual like the governor of any state. Could you see that happening here? I don't think so. I don't think Polis would do it. I think that bill that was going through the legislature this past session that was intended to ban what are termed, and I'm using air quotes for the Rumble YouTube people, assault rifles. I think that he worked behind the scenes to derail that. That's my sense of what took place. I don't think he would ever do such a thing, but should he? Shouldn't the Democrats be putting pressure on him to take the kind of bold action that Governor Grisham has done? And this is huge for her in terms of nationwide publicity and name ID. Had you ever even heard of Governor Grisham, Michelle Lujan Grisham, before today? I hadn't. And we border her. We have one of the four corner states right there. I had never heard her name before this whole thing happened. But the way that she went about it here, the answer must be to remove, in my opinion, is to remove her from office as quickly and legally as possible. And I say that because if you just allow someone to take these kinds of bold anti-constitutional actions, and the only response is, well, let's file a lawsuit and the court will enjoin them from imposing it, and then you just go on about business as usual, I don't think so. The reason this is different when it comes to a recall, and remember, Colorado has gone through fits and spurts with this, where we've just decided to recall people that we dislike or that disagree with us or that vote on a bill that we don't. I don't think that's right. I think that's garbage. This is different. This is a woman who stuck her hand up and said, I promise to uphold and defend I presume, the Constitution of the state of New Mexico and the Constitution of the United States. This is not that. And having violated the fundamental part of that oath, not a policy disagreement, a violation of the fundamental part of that oath, she got to go. And it has to send a message to every other lefty out there, and right-winger too, man. If a right-winger were to come into office and to simply declare to do something in violation of the Constitution, they ought to be removed from office too. We have to be protective of the constitutional rights. And so this governor, she's got to go. It's not enough to just correct her through the courts. This isn't even a close call. I got a text from good dude, good listener, who said the New Mexico legislature is trying to impeach her as of yesterday. Hats off to them. Impeach the hell out of her. I don't know, though. Let me take a look at the New Mexico legislature composition and see, do they have enough votes? It's a pretty Democrat state these days. So they may not have the ability to do it because Dems will defend their own no matter what they do. If they knife to death another person, they would figure out a way to support them. That's my supposition here. Let's take a look at this right here. New Mexico, the legislature. I'm not sure if the Republicans are in a position to make that happen or not, but that's what has to take place. There cannot be anyone, Republican or Democrat, who takes a step like this. This is what it says. Political composition of the New Mexico legislature. Exactly what I thought, folks. This looks eerily reminiscent of what we have going on under our broken gold dome. There are currently 45 Democrats, 25 Republicans, and some others in their House of Representatives. And on the Senate side, 27 Democrats and 14 Republicans. It is that impeachment, unless the Democrats are going to jump in and defend the Constitution, that impeachment isn't going to go anywhere. But what a ridiculous, overarching abuse of authority to do that. 303-696-1971. Do you think that could happen here? What should happen to any elected official that takes these kinds of brazen steps? That's my opinion. It's not even a close call that the governor can simply declare a suspension of your Second Amendment rights, which is what it is, for 30 days. And by the way, why 30 days? Is that the limit of her executive authority? It could be. So can she renew it every 30 days? I mean, is 30 days going to be enough for law enforcement to crack down on the crime? My guess is, like our legislature, this legislature has gone on a free-for-all in changing their laws to make them more thug-friendly and less victim-protective. And they've probably emasculated their law enforcement the way our Colorado legislature has done by putting them on their heels. I just don't think that this makes a lot of sense. Here's what it's called, the Carry Prohibition something executive order. Ridiculous. Along the lines, by the way, of changes that are coming for the criminal justice system, I should tell you that I think it's tomorrow, we are going to have on the author of a book that says that plea bargaining is the problem. Not the problem that makes us less safe, not a problem that needs to be stopped because more people need to be incarcerated, but for all the reasons that you think. It's a fascinating book. I read it over the weekend, and by read it, yes, I mean Audible, on some of these long runs and other things. But we are going to have an author on of a book called Plea Bargaining. It's horrible, or something like that. Plea bargaining is broken. And we're going to have a conversation with her. And it's along these lines, too. She interviewed no prosecutors that I can tell, and I'll ask her about that. But she did interview a ton of public defenders in different places. And it's a fascinating book because some of the things she points out, I understand. I get where she's coming from. But most of what she has are horror stories, anecdotal one-offs from jurisdictions, nothing like I've ever worked for and nothing like the state of Colorado that I'm aware of. But it'll be a fascinating conversation because the topic appeals to both conservatives and liberals. This idea that the plea bargaining process has just gotten crazy. And the reason this book is getting traction now, and it's pretty recently published, is in light of all the pleas of guilty by the January 6th defendants out of Washington, D.C. So I'm excited to have her on tomorrow to have this conversation. I kind of hope, Billy, we can get her on for 2 segments because it'd be one thing to talk about the groundwork for how she comes to these conclusions in her stories, but she also offers some fixes. And I'm fascinated by some of the suggestions of what these fixes are because I don't know, man. I've dabbled a little bit in the criminal justice system, and it feels like some of these things just don't jive with my experience. Hey, listen, stick around. When we come back, your calls, your texts. I got to get back to those texts, by the way. 303-696-1971. Lots of texts. Good Lord. Lots of texts. Hit us with the calls at 303-696-1971. George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy. Why should
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Here's what the New Mexico Constitution, Article 2, Section 6, says about the right to bear arms. No law shall abridge the right of the citizen to keep and bear arms for security and defense, for lawful hunting and recreational use, and for other lawful purposes. But nothing herein shall be held to permit the carrying of concealed weapons. Now, that's not a bar to concealed carry, by the way. That just says that under Article 2, it's not one that guarantees. It's not a constitutional carrying clause. But the rest of it seems pretty strong. No law shall abridge the right of a citizen to keep and bear arms for security and defense. And yet, that's what we have from the New Mexico governor. Just some food for thought here as we get to the phone lines. There's one open at 303-696-1971. Lots of texts coming in. And that is, for those of you that are out there like, well, I get it. I totally get it. Something's got to be done. People, kids dying in the streets, shooting each other. And this is the kind of thing that might have, even if it saves a life, which is just nonsensical. We could save so many lives by banning cars, but nobody's going to do that, right? Well, you know what I mean. Maybe Denver. But I want you to envision an environment where, because of social media, the things that are being said create such a potential for crime or chaos or mayhem or violence that a governor steps in and says, I'm going to issue an executive order that suspends the First Amendment just for 30 days, just until we get our hands around all of these violent communications and these things that are stirring up insurrection. 30 days, I'm suspending the First Amendment. These same liberals would wing themselves out of a window. Actually, at this point, they may be on board with it, but there are folks out there that would say, you just can't suspend the first. This, to me, is right in the same zip code of this. How do we do it? 303-696-1971. Bob, you're on 710. Bob, what do you think?
Morning, George.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, I just think it's ludicrous. I think, that, and I definitely think this lady should be recalled. I mean,
or impeached. It sounds like impeachment's on the table.
Well, impeached or, just taken out of office there. I mean, anybody with any common sense knows that it doesn't make any difference. You can restrict that, take people's gun rights away. It's been known for years and years that anybody that wants to get a gun is going to be able to get a gun, and it's the bad guys. It's not the good guys that are out there killing people. What we need to do is really take a strong stance and get behind our law enforcement, let them do their job out there, and hopefully, get the prosecutors and the DA's office to keep these guys in jail, not turn them out on the streets as soon as we get them into the system. That's what's going on.
I think that's part of it. But what else do you mean by the things that you want to see government do? Like, what's the answer to this? I in no way do I support what the governor has done here. This is not the right way to approach this. Amend your Constitution if you need. I don't think they can amend the Second Amendment in the U.S. Constitution, but amend your Constitution. Do something. But this whole flailing around, I'm going to use my power to do anything. What's the answer if it's not that? Like, how do you deal with the Alburquerque violent crime?
Well, like I said there, George, I think the way you deal with it is you back the law enforcement. I think you have to put the law enforcement out there, and my gosh, if you don't have enough law enforcement, by God, bring in the National Guard and let them help police the streets of Albuquerque until they get this thing under control. That would be the smart thing to do, it would seem like to me.
Bob, and I get where you're going with sort of, hey, there are other things to try other than that. But picture, if you will, uniformed troops on street corners in a city, in an American city, and what that looks and feels like. Like, listen, the National Guard is as you know, is the only part of the military that can actually assist in law enforcement operations. No Title 10, no
Correct.
Active duty can. But can you envision what that would look like to have National Guard men and women on the corners of every street or every other street in Denver? It would look not like America,
No, it would maybe not look like America for the time being, but it's not. I don't think it needs to be a long-term fix. I'm saying to assist the law enforcement agencies until they can get the forces and the people they need to take, complete control control of those areas where, they've just gone completely out of control. I just think it's, in my estimation, what is better? Isn't it better to do that? I don't know why we should be afraid of our National Guard, why the American public should be, if their children's safety is at heart there.
Well,
that's the way I see it.
Bob, I'll say this, when she casts it in such dire terms that people don't feel safe to walk from point A to point B or go to school, when you paint it in those terms, you're asking for permission to do something extreme, and that would be extreme. But I am so loath to endorse the idea of using the National Guard for local law enforcement other than in a catastrophe, a man-made or natural disaster. Do you know what I mean? Like in those circumstances, something short of martial law where you, and I can tell you, do you remember when the fires were raging down in Levita? They sent the Guard down there because people had to flee their property. And as you know, scumbags are everywhere, and scumbags will take the opportunity to loot your home of your stuff because they know you're not going to be home because you listen to the evacuation orders. I do believe that those people should be treated as harshly as possible under the law. But in that part of the state, I'm not sure the law would handle them. I'm pretty sure other neighbors would take care of them. So they put the Guard out there on these different street corners to try to keep people from going back into these areas, these evacuated areas. That to me makes sense. You know what I mean? If there was some other, a riot or something, like we had the National Guard out there for parts of the George Floyd riots and stuff. But on a day-to-day basis, putting them out there, even for just long enough for what? DPD to do house searches for guns, or I don't know. I would just be super concerned about because these aren't folks, by the way, that are sitting there waiting to be used. They're like you and me. In fact, when I say you and me in particular, right? Like I get the phone call from the general that says, hey, dude, we need you to put on the uniform and be around all day, every day for as long as we tell you to.
Right. I understand that. But, if it is such an emergency like this governor says it is, then I think that would warrant that. And, maybe to go on, maybe just a little bit different there. I think our country as a whole there, George, you take a look at Portland, Oregon, a place like this where some of our big corporations are shutting their stores down there, Walmart and Walgreens, my gosh, if we're going to do that, instead of letting these guys dictate to us, what we're going to do, I think the first thing I do if Walmart or somebody came up to me that was supplying a lot of jobs for people and saying, hey, we're going to shut this down because we got too much theft and too much vandalism. My gosh, I'd put the National Guard in there and say, no, we don't want you to leave. You're a big part of our community. You're supplying a lot of jobs. My God, we're going to put the National Guard in here and we're going to get this thing stopped. I think that's what we're going to have to go to if we're going to get this country back under control, is really get our teeth into the law enforcement and do what we need to do to get these characters off the road that have felt entitled here for the last, who knows, maybe 5 to 10 years.
The law enforcement piece is legit, and I have no problems with the idea that we reallocate law enforcement resources from parts of the state to accommodate whatever's going on, and whether it's Albuquerque or a city like that here in Colorado. I just want the Guard to be the last resort, because it's not a good look, or in my opinion, a good use of that limited, I'm going to call it T32, Title 32 time, or even state active duty time, to put those folks on street corners. It wouldn't feel like America. The imagery alone would be devastating in other parts of the country to see that take place in Denver. I would like to see emboldened law enforcement, empowered law enforcement. You're right about that, but I just don't want to see the Guard used that way.
But don't you think the imagery, George, would send a message to other states? It would send a message maybe to the world that, hey, the United States is serious about taking care of the rampant, criminal activity that is starting to spring up in these cities. Yeah,
it's not the U.S. Remember, it's the governors. So, picture Governor Polis mobilizing some significant portion of the Guard to do law enforcement functions, not during a time of natural disaster, even if it was some sort of this self-generated emergency related to a claimed public health issue from the use of firearms. Can you imagine what you and I would be saying on the radio? Can you imagine what other folks would be talking about if, as you're driving through Denver, there's a uniformed, armed guardsman standing on every corner? It'd be crazy, man. I think it would be so bad for the community, not because it doesn't have the potential to get things under control. It could, but not long. There's no long-term solution there. And I just think it would look horrible.
Yeah, you might be right, George. It might look horrible, but and I've been kind of an advocate after all these school shootings and whatnot to have, if we can't put our local law enforcement there, put the National Guard there. I don't know, put them in non-combat uniforms if you have to. Hell, we got the Secret Service out there every day and protecting our president and whatnot. Why in the heck couldn't you do that with the National Guard? These guys are well trained, they're there to protect. And to me, it makes sense, and that's just my opinion. I understand where you're coming from. I'm just throwing my opinion and thoughts out there.
No, and Bob, that's what I love about callers and this show is that you come in and we have these kinds of conversations. You just can't do them anywhere else. Bob, hey, thank you, my man. Have a great rest of your week. Larry, I promise we'll get to you. We just got to cut away for a quick break here. We'll get made smarty smart by Amy from Alpine, and then we'll go right back to the phones and we'll talk with you, Larry, and anyone else who fills up Bob's line at 303-696-1971 and the others. We'll also take a look at these texts as they continue to come in. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
Welcome back to the George Show on 710 KNUN. KNUN? Could we be KNUN? Be a big change from KNUS. Let's put it in. Let's put the memo in. KNUS, if it's Monday, it is that time of the day where we get caught up on all things financial and Wall Streety by going to our VIP line. It's Amy from Alpine Planning. Amy, how are you? How was your weekend?
Good morning, George. I'm here to report on KNUN. And
in fact, if we could just add a YA at the end, it could be KNUNYA, like Nunya business.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. I like it. I like it. Good weekend, sir. Man, feels like fall out there, I tell you.
I agree.
Okay, I have a question for you, sir. In your great life, if you had to choose one to live without, would it be strawberry jam or a Twinkie?
That's a tough one. I haven't had Twinkies in so many years, but there was a part of my life where they were like medicine. I don't know how to describe it.
What is actually in that cream? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I'm with you. I don't think I've had one in several. Well, anyway, to give everyone a little bit of a smile on their Monday,
Jam.
The reason I ask is because Smucker's is buying Hostess
What?
for $4.6 billion.
Dang.
So the merging of a couple of great American brands. And now the jelly owns the Twinkie. So
Is there
there we go.
a woman responsible for it that we call Mother Smucker? Is there anything like that?
I'll have more on that update later. Let me get to some more real news for you.
Right.
But anyway, we're looking good to start this Monday. Right now, the Dow's up 150, the S&P positive as well, up about 20 points. NASDAQ with some nice gains, up 65. This is coming off of losing week last week, where really the technology sector drove everything. Apple and NVIDIA in particular. Apple was down 6% for the week after China, of course, ordered the central government officials no longer using iPhones, etc. But taking a look this week, I think it's worthwhile to focus on bonds for a minute. These higher rates and higher yields. Americans are just loving it. We've plowed $213 billion year to date into money market funds.
Wow.
That's compared to only $7 billion this time last year. 40% of that money came in March when the banking system was in turmoil. I think what's got us popping a little bit this morning is some news that came out late yesterday, which is really a consensus that the Fed will hold on not rising rates. In other words, just leaving things flat for the September meeting. There's a 7% probability right now of a rate hike. Watching on Wednesday for the inflation data, the CPI report. So
any guesses?
Aside from that, what's that?
Any guesses?
Well, it seems like if the inflation number is good, the markets plummet. If it's bad, they go up. So
Isn't that
I'm
weird?
We're going to see a little bit of I'm thinking we're going to see a little bit of stabilization. But I will say, again, that the CPI number can be very misleading because it doesn't include the things that are most susceptible to inflation. So again, though, that's on Wednesday, and we will see how markets jump. But it's nice to be in the green after a losing week last week. As always, if anyone needs some personal guidance or some questions answered, Brian and Gabe and I are standing by.
Will we know the answer to the inflation thing by the time Brian comes on this Friday or whomever we get?
Yes. Actually, it should be reporting later that, there should be, market movement and a little bit of data that leaks out in time for Gabe's report on Wednesday. When
excellent.
You guys can talk baseball and football and
depressing.
So,
I can't take on the Seattle thing right now. It's just come on.
Oh, George.
But go Buffs.
Well,
go Buffs. That's really all I've got.
Yep.
Oh, Amy.
Well, anyway, Wednesday for Gabe, Friday for Brian. Plenty of good news out there.
This is the best, as are you. Alpine Planning Group is a comprehensive financial planning firm committed to improving your long-term financial success. Investing, it's a matter of trust, and they're prepared to earn yours. Call them today, 303-843-0918. Remember, Smucker's just bought your Twinkie, 303-843.
I was going to say, go stock up. Go stock up.
0918.
Speaking of inflation data.
God bless you, Amy.
See you, George.
See you.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Woodbury Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC and registered investment advisor. Alpine Planning Group and Woodbury Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated entities. 14 West Dry Creek Circle, Littleton, Colorado, 80120.
Larry from Denver, you're on 710. Larry, what do you think?
Well, George, I don't know.
Uh-oh. Larry, you broke up on us for just a moment. We probably had you on hold while you were on a clear signal. What were you saying?
I'm saying that to really say, first of all, that quote unquote gun crime is a serious problem in our country.
Right.
If we say it's a serious problem, then what is the solution to it? You look at who is using firearms for unlawful purposes. They're criminals. And yet the kinds of things that people talk about doing, like universal background checks, banning AR-15s, banning 30-round magazines. Who does that all affect in the scheme of things? That affects law-abiding citizens, the ones who pay attention to the laws. The criminals aren't paying any attention to the laws.
Well, that's what I think you're right, Larry, in that how in the world does a governor expect that this order is going to deter the bad guys? I think what she's hoping is that she's created a very easy vehicle for law enforcement to come in and grab up any guns that they can see visible. They contact someone, they're in possession of a firearm, they can't carry concealed, they can't carry open. I mean, I think she's just trying to create a tool for law enforcement to grab up guns, which is reckless and not only violation of the Constitution, but reckless in the idea that this is what's going to make us safer.
Exactly. And it won't. I've talked before about the fact is, if you consider a gun crime to be serious, then the punishment should be serious and the enforcement should be serious by the DAs. We don't have any of that.
Well, I disagree that the DAs don't treat it seriously, but you should know that all of these gun charges are probation eligible charges. And there had been efforts in the past to throw in some sort of a sentencing enhancer that says you get, like the feds have, you have an automatic extra 5 years on top of any felony crime that you commit while in possession of a firearm or certain felonies. And this legislature, Larry, is never, ever, never going to vote for more jail or prison for criminals because that's who their constituency is. They don't care about victims. They care about criminals.
Right. Exactly. You just made my point exactly. We're not, nobody, the folks who are quote unquote in charge aren't serious.
What's the answer then, man, by the way? What's the answer to this?
My answer would be we would have law enforcement and the DAs lined up with the legislature to say what you talked about. To me, it would be use a firearm in the commission of a crime, be convicted of that, and then I don't add on 10 years time. Second offense, 20 years time. Third offense is they're all over. But nobody wants to do that. They won't do that.
No, they won't even do 5 years. They wouldn't even do 1 year or 2 year. I mean, the idea that prison is a potential deterrent or at least a protection from the bad guys for a certain period of time, they simply don't believe it because at their core, they believe that society and cops are to blame for these people running afoul of the law, that it's not them. It's their circumstances, and it's an overzealous police department. That's how they view the world, and they're the ones who are in charge. And that's because voters put them there.
Oh no, that's how we have evolved over the last 30 years or so. We didn't have a lot of this stuff. We had
hey, Larry,
falling.
Larry, would you forgive me, man? I got 15 seconds, buddy. We've had a great multi-minute conversation here, but they're going to cut me off. When we come back, there's a guy named Gabe Evans. He'd like to take back the 8th Congressional District from Dr. Pay Yourself Caraveo. Stick around to have that conversation with us. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here halfway through the Monday show on this September the 11th, 2023. Happy to bring up on the VIP line a guy who wants to change things politically here, at least in terms of our congressional delegation back in D.C. As you know, we're entitled to 8 seats in the House of Representatives. That split right now is 3 Republicans and 5 Democrats. The 3 Republicans, in alphabetical order, are Boebert, Buck, and then down south, of course, in El Paso County, we have Congressman Doug Lamborn. Coulda had the 8th congressional district, but for some things that took place last year that were unpredictable, I think. Maybe it was predictable, but we just couldn't get over the hump. This time around, though, Dr. Gonna pay herself out of her funds, out of her campaign funds, Caraveo, has announced, of course, she's running for re-election, because once you get in there, you end up serving for many, many, many terms. And there are 2 Republicans right now who have raised their hand and said, I want to run and defeat Dr. Caraveo. One of them is our guest right now on the phone. His name is Gabe Evans. He's a member of our state House of Representatives and a super guy. Gabe, how are you?
Doing good this morning. How are you doing?
Doing well. Now, you've been on before, Gabe, but for those folks that didn't hear that interview, I'd love for you to begin with your background. Tell us what brought you to politics.
Yeah, absolutely. So my story really starts with my grandparents. On the Evans side, Grandpa Evans spent 20 years in the U.S. Navy. On my mom's side, my grandpa, my abuelito Chavez, actually immigrated here from Mexico, earned his citizenship in World War II. And so really through both sides of my family has come this understanding that America is a precious place. It's a wonderful place, and you do what you can to take care of your country, your state, your community. It's why I served 12 years in the U.S. Army, another 10 years in the Colorado Army National Guard. I was born and raised here in Colorado. This is where I'm raising my family. And, last year as a police officer, the pro-crime policies of the left just got to the point where I said, I can't do my job anymore. I can't fulfill that oath that I swore as a police officer to take care of my community because of how the left has handcuffed me. So raised my hand, got into the state legislature, and, now particularly relevant here on September 11th, given that, you and I are both veterans. That fight is continuing on because we have a Democrat in Congress in the 8th Congressional District who has voted against our military, who has voted against our veterans. I lost a friend in Afghanistan, and that's absolutely not acceptable to me. And so I'm continuing the fight by trying to ensure that my kids, my community, my friends, and my neighbors actually have a safe and secure America. Like Reagan said, not transmitted in the blood. Every generation's got to stand and fight for that, and that's what I'm doing.
Tell me about your family too.
Yeah, married, 2 kids. Like I said, born and raised here in Colorado.
How old are the
doing
kids?
The same with them. 7 and 11.
So that's a tough one, man. Let me ask you the behind the scenes stuff. The decision to run for Congress, or really any office, is a decision you just can't make on your own as a part of a family. How is your wife with the idea that, one, you're jumping into a super intense campaign that's going to take you, if everything works out right, through next November. And then, oh, by the way, the reward, if you pull this thing off, is you're gone 3 or 4 days a week for a whole bunch of weeks during the year. How is she with that?
Well, I'm a Christian. I think God does things for a reason. So my wife is actually from Washington, D.C.
Get out of town.
Washington, D.C. I kid you not. We went to school. We actually met at a school in the greater Washington, D.C. area. And she's a political junkie. So she's very supportive of the idea. We're also big with educational choice. So the bulk of our kids' education has been through homeschool, and you can homeschool a lot of different places. So we've had a lot of the logistical conversations. How does this work? She's like, well, I got friends, I got family. You've got friends in the Washington, D.C. area. Why wouldn't we do this? When the opportunity's there, you can go and potentially unseat this far left congresswoman. Why wouldn't you do that?
Now, Gabe,
so she's very supportive, and yeah, we've got a plan.
That's fantastic. Here's the downside too for us locally, and that is your decision to run for Congress means you're not going to be running for re-election for your seat. Is there any risk of that seat slipping over to the other guys?
No, and that's definitely a part of the calculation. The seat that I represent right now is a pretty safe Republican seat. So if there was any worry that that seat might slip over to the other side, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. But the Republicans have a pretty good advantage in my current state house seat, and so I feel confident that we will be able to hold that seat and also, have some good candidates to go take down this far left congresswoman in Colorado's 8th.
We're talking with State Representative Gabe Evans, who'd like to become U.S. Representative. Gabe Evans, will you be paying yourself a salary out of your campaign funds for your congressional seat?
No.
What?
No. I know, crazy, right?
Billy wants to know if you can pay me. No, what is that? First off, apparently there's no rules that prevent it. Is that true? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I was shocked last year when I heard that the congresswoman was, paying herself a salary, and yeah, apparently that's something that you can do. Like I said, not something I'm planning on doing. But again, the left tends to think a little bit different than us folks.
In terms of, I want to talk to you a little bit about your plans, but then I also want to talk to you about concerns that you've had with Dr. Caraveo's representation so far. But let's begin with this. If you had a top 3 things you wanted to accomplish in the House, and here's the reality, man, you're going to be one of 435. God willing, you're still in the majority. But at the end of the day, a freshman congressperson's ability to get a lot done is really made challenging by the structure that's out there of government. What would be your goal, your first 100 days, your first term in office, if you pulled this thing off?
Yeah, so again, my background is military and law enforcement. We know that we have crises on both of those fronts, right? We've got spiking crime all over the nation, but especially here in Colorado, where, by some estimates, there was a DOJ report that was released earlier this year that says that Colorado had the highest rate of violent victimization over the last 5 years compared to 22 of the other most populated states. So bringing my law enforcement experience, we don't have a lot of cops in Congress. So bringing my law enforcement experience to that discussion out there to try to drive some of the change that we need to see in order to get this crime under control, because a lot of it's not homegrown. A lot of this stuff comes across our southern border. So being able to drive that conversation forward in perhaps a way that, like I said, there's not a lot of cops in Congress, so be able to add to the conversation there. And then also on the military side, we are near a record low.
Hang on, back up, Gabe, real quick.
Ahead.
Tell me the best role the federal government can play in local law enforcement. Is it funding? Is it trying to tackle those issues like the border that spill in directly to local law enforcement? What's the thing that you think the Congress can do the best to help local law enforcement?
So it's really 2 things. Last year, there was a poll done by the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police, saying, what's the biggest concerns on cops' minds? And near the top of that list was just rhetoric. Cops are willing to go out and do their job. They just don't need to be vilified by elected leaders. And unfortunately, that's what we see a lot of today. So just by helping to change that conversation and say, yeah, we know we've got a bunch of dedicated, honorable people who have raised their hand and said that they're going to go out and they're going to do a dangerous job to take care of the communities, and we want to respect them and support them. Yeah, every profession has a few bad apples. But we're not going to focus excessively on that. We're going to focus on how do we respect, support, promote, recruit, and retain high-quality individuals to go take care of our communities. Just that rhetoric completely changes the way that law enforcement can do their job. It completely changes recruiting and retention. We know we're in the middle of a recruiting and a retention crisis right now where people don't want to do the job because of the rhetoric and because of how that rhetoric then bleeds over into policy and liability and all of the other things that make the job so difficult to do. So that's one of the first things that you can do in Congress is just be, appreciative of the folks that are taking on this incredibly difficult, challenging, and high liability job. And then the second is to, confront those things that are within the purview of the national government, the federal government, because, again, I'm a small government guy. The federal government needs to get our southern border under control. We know that we have human trafficking. We know that we have a huge flow of illegal narcotics. We had ISIS folks, moving folks across the border this last month or the month before that. And all of that stuff filters out into the local communities. You can just, read the newspaper and find, if you know what to look for, you can find connections to organized crime, cartel members, straight up terrorists that are exploiting our southern border and making every state a border state.
Let me ask you in terms of the hot button issues of the day. And I don't know if you've yet been confronted with these things. I just presume as you bounce around and do the breakfast and the lunches and the other community events that folks are going to ask about this. So it's not quite a lightning round, but that's my intention, is to get shorter, tighter answers, but take as much time as you need. Okay. Ukraine. Where are you with Ukraine?
No, I think that Teddy Roosevelt said it best. We need to speak softly and carry a big stick. And so when we look at the international community, we got to say, all right, when we have aggressive people that are trying to destabilize the world, we have to make sure that we have a plan for that. But we also don't want to commit American troops. I've been the American troops that are committed. So speak softly, carry a big stick.
Does that include continuing funding for Ukraine in their battle to resist that Russian invasion?
I think we need to make absolutely sure that there's quality control with any funds and resources that go over there, same as we do with every government program. But, I think that, allowing a dictator to take over the breadbasket of Europe is also a really bad plan.
Let's talk about the issue that I think we thought might have gone the way of the dodo after Dobbs, but it certainly hasn't, and that is abortion, pro-life, pro-choice. Where do you come down on this, and what are the issues Republicans are talking to you about regarding it?
Yeah, so I'm pro-life, but when it comes to pro-life, my wife and I, we have 2 kids. We've also had 8 miscarriages, and when I say we, it's mostly her, right? I support her as best as I can, but this is happening to her, not me. And so I think that we just need to have an appreciation for the fact that these are incredibly complex, incredibly emotionally charged situations. And there's there's a lot of complexity to this. So like I did in military, like I did in law enforcement, we need to have conversations about how to best preserve life, but they're not, 15 or 30-second soundbite conversations.
Would you support the nationalization of pro-life laws? I presume you'd be opposed to the pro-choice ones, but do you support congressional action in this area?
So the pro-life movement has been working for the last, 50 years to try to have this issue, overturned and returned to the states. So we've seen a lot of success there, and I don't really see any reason to reverse course on the success that the pro-life movement is having.
Okay, let's talk about Donald Trump. In terms of the president and these prosecutions and stuff, does anybody ask you about any congressional role there? And I'm asking it in this context. We've had Jim Jordan say, hey, I want Fani Willis, I want Alvin Bragg to show up and give some sort of testimony or provide certain documents to the House Judiciary Committee. We've had Marjorie Taylor Greene say, I want to defund the prosecutions of Jack Smith. And then we've had sort of an underlying current here that's really picking up some momentum about we need to impeach Joe Biden. I think in response to a bunch of different things, but including, in my opinion, there's a response to what took place with Donald Trump with those 2 failed impeachment attempts in his term. Where do you come down with all that stuff? And do Republicans ask you about that? Or is this just something that we talk about here on the radio?
Yeah. So obviously when the name Donald Trump comes up, right, you have all of the legal stuff that's associated with that. And that is honestly frustrating to me because as a police officer, I know that justice in this country is based on 2 things. You're innocent until proven guilty, and justice is supposed to be blind. And that is not what we see under the Biden administration. That is not what we see Biden's allies in Congress, like the Congresswoman from the 8th, Yadira Caraballo. That's not what we see them doing. We see them using the justice system in this country to provide cover for their political allies and to persecute their political opponents. That's at least the only explanation that I can come up with for why if you go to a school board meeting, you have the potential of ending up on a domestic terrorist watch list, but we have no idea how cocaine got into the White House. And so, as a police officer who swore an oath to uphold and defend the concept of justice, which is innocent until proven guilty, and that justice is supposed to be blind. Yeah, I think there's a lot of folks that are very frustrated with the current state of the Biden administration and his allies in Congress and how they're running justice in general in this country.
Do you know enough right now to say whether you'd commit to vote for an impeachment inquiry of Joe Biden?
I mean, I'd have to see anything, the actual legislation in front of me, or the proposal in front of me. So difficult to comment without having those particulars. But I mean, I think there's a ton of evidence out there that shows, like we just ran through, right? We have no idea how cocaine got into the White House, but parents that go to school board meetings are going to be on a domestic terrorist watch list. Something's amiss here.
When you look at what Congresswoman Caraveo has done or hasn't done in office, what sticks out in your mind as the least representative of the community she was elected to represent, that she's done or hasn't done?
So about probably over 90% of my state house district is also inside Congressional District 8. So we share tens of thousands of constituents in common. And during her time in the state legislature, she actually was the prime sponsor for a piece of legislation that really, really hurt our agriculture here in Colorado. Agricultural is Colorado's second largest industry, contributing over $40 billion every year to our economy. And obviously, when we have a war going in Europe that impacts a significant part of the world's food supply coming out of Ukraine, being able to produce agriculture here in Colorado, here in the United States, is critically, critically important. But she sponsored a piece of legislation in the State House that I actually had constituents reach out to me in writing, multi-generation farms that said, yeah, this is probably going to put us out of business. Well, she goes on to the federal level. She's on the agricultural committee, and now she wants to run around and pretend like she's super pro ag, while at the same time continuing to cast votes against agriculture. I had a conversation with this constituent, and I said, "You know who sponsored that piece of legislation, right? It's your current congresswoman." And so to have our agriculture, to have our farmers, to have our food supply under attack from far leftist policies at the same time, that's more important than ever before it's the height of doublespeak, and it's the height of not representing your district. A huge part of this district is in Weld County, which is the fourth highest agricultural producing county in the nation. And she's given a slap in the face to all the farmers there with her legislation and her votes.
What else has she done? She's been in office now, about a year, over a year and a half-ish? Or, wait a minute, it's 2023. She's been in office now about 9 months.
Yeah, so you got that one. Americans, Coloradans are feeling pain at the pump. They're feeling pain whenever they have to go out and buy things. A lot of that comes from the rising cost of energy. She's voted against American energy. She's voted against veterans. She actually was part of a movement that were requesting that Joe Biden actually take funds away from Immigration and Customs and the Border Patrol. She's done just a lot of radical things. She's sided with folks in Congress who have compared the United States to the Taliban.
What?
Yeah. So Congress always has their discussions about who should be on what committee. She sided with members of the squad who have compared the United States to the Taliban. And she said, yeah, I'm standing with this particular member of the squad.
I think what makes Congress, or really any legislative seat, also unique and important, aside from the individual failures of that Democrat member, is that the numbers matter when it comes to the leadership of the House. And to maintain a Speaker of the House, to maintain all the committee chairmanships, which are those positions that help dictate whether or not there's going to be an investigation of Hunter Biden, or whether or not anybody can be held accountable under the government by the House, that the true oversight of a Democrat president, you have to have Republican butts in seats, right? That's the only way to do that. So even if you had, and you're not this person, Gabe, I think you're A+, I'm just saying a C-level congressperson, if they were Republican, is far more valuable than an A++ Democrat, at least for purposes of managing the House of Representatives and providing that true oversight.
Absolutely. And that's why Colorado's 8th congressional district is so important. This is one of the top swing seats in the nation. The congresswoman from there, she won that seat by one of the closest margins of victory that any Democrat in the nation won a seat by, less than a point. She didn't even get to 48.5% of the vote.
Good Lord.
Oh yeah, yeah. She's skated in by the skin of her teeth, as they say. But when we only have a 5-vote majority right now in the U.S. House of Representatives to go against a Democrat-controlled U.S. Senate, a Democrat president, and then all of the Democrat, controlled architecture and government that we have here in Colorado, you got a 5-vote majority in the U.S. House of Representatives right now. That's basically all that's holding back the tide of just crazy leftism right now in this state. So seats like Colorado's 8th congressional district are critically important to preserving and hopefully even growing that majority so that we can have some semblance of balance in this country rather than just the far left ruining our energy, ruining our agriculture, imposing ridiculous things on our military, and causing a lot of problems for Americans when it comes to cost of living.
Gabe, how do you win in an environment where the third-party candidates are legitimate enough to make that gap almost insurmountable? She won, you said, with barely 48.5% of the vote, not because the Republicans failed to turn out, but because some of them actually ended up, it looks like, voting for a libertarian candidate. How come this is going to be different?
Yeah. I mean, so, a lot of this stuff really does boil down to how well can a candidate carry the message, and do people, do they resonate with that candidate? And that's what I think one of my strengths is. I have a lot of ties to all 3 counties in this district. It's about 60% Adams County, 35% Weld County, 5% Larimer County. I was a cop for 10 years in Adams County. My kids currently go to school in Adams County. I've gone to church for years in Adams County. I live in Weld County. I raise a few cows in Weld County, and then I teach concealed carry courses in the little piece of Larimer County that's in this district. So I have deep ties to the district. I'm raising elementary school aged kids right now. So a lot of the same issues that are confronting folks in this district are issues that I'm dealing with as well. And then also in between being, military and law enforcement, having sworn 3 separate oaths, U.S. Army, Colorado Army, National Guard, and the police department, 3 separate oaths to uphold and defend the Constitution and take care of this country, of this state, of my community. I think that resonates with people.
Gabe, you also, last question, just because of today, you deployed with either the Guard or, and I can't remember who you said you were with before him, but had you deployed with them?
Yeah, so 2012, 2013, I got to spend some quality time in a combat zone over in the Middle East.
Now, do you remember September 11th while you were deployed? I talked a little bit about mine when I was in Iraq. Did it stick out to you as a different, almost surreal kind of day, or was it just business as usual? I was trying to explain that where I was in U.S. Division North in Iraq, the big bonus was they gave us 4 hours of me time. You know what I mean? Like that was hey, it's September 11th and you get 4 hours. What did you guys do while you were downrange in a combat zone?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was a little bit of both. Like, I remember waking up that morning and being like, oh, wow, this is September 11th, right? I mean, I remember watching this on TV, this ultimately set in motion the chain of events that caused me to raise my hand and join the Army. So, yeah, here I am, September 11th, doing deployed stuff. And then that's about all the time you have. Then you go and you do deployed stuff because, that's how it is in the combat zone.
Amen to that. I don't think we can have enough veterans, by the way, in Congress, especially with all the things going on across the planet Earth, man. It's if we're going to be involved in it, I'd rather have folks who have been sent over there to do something to help make those decisions. I just think it's a different kind of personal when they make those decisions.
Well, and we're close to an all-time low for veterans in Congress. I think last year we were at about 17%, which I think is near the all-time low. I think we've gone up like 1% since then. So we don't have a ton.
Gabe, how can folks find out more about you or help you if they want to?
Yeah, so this race is not a cheap race. The Democrats have a ton of money. So you can learn more about me at electgabeevans.com. Again, that's electgabe, Gabe, Evans, EVANS.com. And if anybody can make a contribution to help me carry this message and unseat this leftist, I would truly appreciate it.
Gabe Evans, man, keep up the fight. We'll have you back on as things develop, okay?
Thanks so much. I appreciate you.
Thanks for all the time. Hey, that was Representative Gabe Evans. He's under the State House Gold Dome right now. He'd like to be under the big white dome out there in Washington, D.C. We'll continue to have on the candidates, not just for that race, but the others that are out there. 2024 is going to be big. No statewide candidates for us here in Colorado. Just really the presidential is the biggest thing. And then it gets to the level of Congress and DAs and county commissioners and all that other stuff. We'll have on candidates to continue this conversation. Love to get your feedback. What did you hear? What did you like? What are you concerned about? 303-696-1971. Before I cut away, I want to tell you about the good guys in teeth out there. They're named Doctors Richter and Snyder. I got to check my calendar. I think I'm due again for another cleaning coming up here. And it's not that I'm looking forward to it, but I'll be honest with you. I love those people enough down there at Twin Aspen Dental Center that I enjoy the opportunity to catch up with them and see what they're up to. And I'll tell you specifically, Dr. Schneider just had a little one. I'm anxious to see the baby pictures. So I want to go down there and say hi and then have them do all the good work they do on my mouth. Now, knock on wood or fake teeth, George Washington teeth, but my mouth has been relatively free from huge problems. I never even had to have braces, folks. All the kids have, of course. And Graham, I imagine, will continue to have to need braces too, but I never had to have braces. Very lucky. But if I did, then I got to tell you, I'd probably have some other concerns about dental care and oral care. And what do I do about the future of my smile? Well, you don't have to answer all those questions by yourself or by going to some big box store dental place. You can go to this great local neighborhood dentist, treat everybody like they're part of the community and their family. They're located at Stroh Road in Parker, right off of Parker Road. Very easy to get to. You can call them at 303-841-7466, 303-841-7466. Looking forward to having them back in the studio when they can make it. TwinAspenDentalCenter.com. All 4 words put together, TwinAspenDentalCenter.com. When we come back, you, me, text George Brauchler 710 KNUS. Crazy. That's what we are right here at 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you until 10 o'clock, and then Charlie Kirk takes over. He's a national guy. We stay national with a guy named DP, Dennis Prager, and then we go to Sept Gorka. By 3 o'clock, we are back right here in this chair after it's had a chance to air out. That's with Deb Flora, and then I think, every time I say this, I'm proven wrong, but I think we have Stefan today, 4 to 7. I don't know. Billy, you said that it was Jeff in for him on Friday or something like that?
No, we had Jeff was in for Randy.
For Randy.
Yeah, that's when I heard Jeff.
On the weekend.
Yeah, it was really nice. And Saturday evening, I was driving around and heard his voice. That was kind of cool.
Man, good for you.
I was hoping to turn in and catch Randy, but no, it was it was Jeff. And he did a good job. It was a neat conversation. I don't know who's
I like Jeff's energy. I think it's great.
Yeah. I don't know who's in for Stefan.
You had said, I don't know either. I keep waiting for Alexa to update us. You had said too that D-Will was on with Jeff on Randy's show. We are working to get him on to the show. Maybe tomorrow we're able to get him on. We're working on some schedule stuff. He's a very, very busy fella, as you can imagine, but some big changes that are taking place in response to this effort to keep Donald Trump off of the ballot here. By the way, I had a chance to look at social media and listen to some of the clips of Jenna Griswold on some of the national shows. Good God, man. First off, there's no doubt she's running for governor, but two, come on. I mean, this is the best we could do. She is so clearly anti-Trump, and if she had the stones to be able to, that's probably the wrong. Oh, Stefan is in today. Corner Alexa, stones is the wrong term. She had the guts to have simply said, I am taking action to deny Trump access to the ballot. That'd be one thing. But this whole, she's clearly a cheerleader for keeping him off the ballot and loves the national limelight to do this sort of thing. It's just.
And you know what gets me is, okay, there are certain politicians that are very good with the glib surface answer to make it not sound so much like just bold-faced politics.
No.
She is not one of them. Every time she's trying to answer something, it sounds so tainted politically. I know she's trying hard to not make it. I think she is.
Is she trying hard?
I think she is. I think she's trying hard because what I think is, and this is the reason, I think she wants to appear at this point as more of a centrist. So then she can make the next ascension in the next run, just like Polis playing more libertarian. I think that she's trying to have that illusion that, okay, Republicans, I will listen to you. I understand your concerns. I'm not going to be a bald-faced partisan. But everything comes out of her mouth says partisan, 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 partisan. Everything.
It's
even
true.
The subtext is not even that subtle. And that's the problem is it just, you look at it and you're like, I don't believe you. And what you're saying, the way you structure the sentences and how it comes out of your mouth and how you put the paragraphs together, you either don't believe this or you're just lying to me in some cases. And so
she's on, I can't believe we're spending this much time talking about it, but she's on social media championing like some award she won as like labor's champion. I'm like, what the hell does the Secretary of State have to do with labor?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Like they do business registration and licensing and all that stuff. And they can, what in the world does Jenna Griswold have to do with labor as Secretary of State? Maybe I'm just missing some part of the job. That's possible. It's possible.
I
but
just keep
what
thinking,
in the hell?
And then where's the ranking system on the list of like things to accomplish and things to do that sits on her wall, the big whiteboard or whatever it might be? Where is win awards on that list? I understand coming out and trumpeting them when you win them, but is this material to what your job is? And
I don't mind the awards. I don't mind that. What I do mind is that at some point this organization sat around a table and said, who's done the most for us this year? I know, the Secretary of State. Like what? Wait, huh? How?
Makes you wonder who the other nominees were.
It's just so hyper political, but that hyper partisan thing. By the way, my great fear is she is such a horrific candidate at the statewide level. It will make it that much easier for the most hyper partisan AG we've ever had in Colorado to become our next governor. My God, the feel your pain guy. This dude is Bill Clinton.
In many ways,
my God, the very personable, huge fundraising guy. Absolutely no core set of values that anyone can identify.
But is very good in front of a class. So when he's standing in front of groups of people.
Oh, he's a talker.
He does a really good job of having that air of expertise and understanding and command of the knowledge. He knows how to do that because he's stood in front of the classroom. So it's much different than when you have to stand in front of, I don't know, a jury. That's a totally different set of requirements.
Who can actually call BS? Yeah, your students don't get a vote on your performance.
No, they don't. So,
you know, that end of the semester review is largely anonymous and doesn't sting quite as much as when a jury says, we don't believe you. Or not guilty.
That's got to be super embarrassing when you get in front of Supreme Courts and they do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's happened a couple times.
It's a little embarrassing
this year. We need to track, by the way, the Elijah McClain cases. I think one of them is set to go this month. I want to track that. I'd love to do the show from the courthouse. I'm pretty sure that won't happen up there in the 17th. I presume Phil will be right there at the corner of the table leading the charge on this highest profile case he's ever handled as Attorney General. But, well, we'll see. Nonetheless, all this talk about the partisanship does make me think back to not the question about September 11th I asked Gabe, but I was smiling when he was talking about, hey, man, it was like you wake up and you think, boy, whatever happened back on that day is the reason I'm sitting here right now. That is legit. That is true. And then he said, and then you go right back to business. I'm like, yep, other than the flag thing, that was pretty much it. There was no like special cake or something like that. Yeah. I'm pretty sure the ice cream machine didn't work, which is a huge morale killer downrange. But that was about it. But then when we were in the 6 o'clock hour, one of the things that we talked about was, you know, that's 22 years ago today. And I can remember it. I don't need to go back and revisit the memories of it, but I do wonder if it were to happen again today, would we unite the way we did after September the 11th, or have we changed so much? Have we permitted ourselves to become so hateful and poisonous towards one another that we would never pull together if something like that happened again?
That's a good question. And oddly enough, it surprises me that we did something that intelligent in the 6 o'clock hour. That's normally not the time in which we do something.
We didn't intend to. It just happened.
Yes, it was totally by accident. We promised not to let it happen again this week.
Yeah, it just happened.
It did. And it's an interesting question because the frame that I have is that George Bush wasn't necessarily super popular before September 11th, but at least for a brief amount of time, the country united behind him. And given where we are now, I have a really hard time believing that if we got President Biden down to a ground zero of a major terrorist attack, that then we would unite as Americans and want to right the wrongs. I have a feeling that we have become too cynical, that there would be a portion of our country that there's nothing Biden could do or say at an event like that that would allow them to put, even for a brief amount of time, support behind him for whatever he was going to do. There would be a long list of reasons as to why, but I don't think we'd be there. And if we flip it and say we have a President Trump or a President DeSantis, or I can't say President Ramaswamy. I can't.
It's never going to happen.
No, I can't do that one. But if one of the other ones was there, President Haley, there's an interesting ray of sunshine.
Yeah.
If they were there, do we think that some of the Democrats would say, well, absolutely, we need to bury these differences for the time being and we need to come together? I don't think they could either. I think that, unfortunately, we've come to a point in our political discourse where, one, our politics defines our truth, but it also defines who we can actually like.
Politics defines our truth.
Yeah.
You just made me make a little pee-pee.
It is.
Because that is horrifying.
It is. It's absolutely horrifying, but it also defines who is a good person, who's an American.
True.
How many times do we hear people calling up and you're only allowed to be called a patriot if you espouse certain beliefs or a part of a certain party? Other than that, you're not a patriot. And we throw pejoratives and labels back and forth across the aisle where certain groups are fascists and white supremacists and other groups are proven communists and Marxists. And we just know it's going to happen. And we've even heard numerous times that this next election, the course of America is
it's existential.
Yeah, so
it's existential.
As if the wrong person winning in 2024 means this grand experiment of more than 200 years somehow falls apart. That's where we've gotten in our political discourse, and it worries me because I don't think that is true in any way, shape, or form. But I do think it's true that we can't come together as a nation based on where we are right now.
Now, say what you will about his politics. A great documentary maker is a guy named Ken Burns. And about 33 years ago this month, the Civil War launched. That to me was wonderful in a couple different ways. I mean, I was a young dude in college at the time when it happened. It actually inspired me to want to learn more. The Civil War.
That's when it happened?
The documentary.
Okay.
The documentary. Yeah. I know I've got the Anderson Cooper hair, but
yes, you do.
No.
Okay. Good. Okay.
But that came out and it inspired me to want to learn more. So I started reading more and all that other stuff. And I think that's what's great about good work is if they motivate you to want to do more. In that very first episode, which was so compelling. I mean, it was almost perfect, especially the way it ended with that letter from Sullivan Ballou, Major Sullivan Ballou. I don't know if you remember that one where it was very, very compelling. But in it, as it's setting the table for the Civil War, it has a chapter called, or whatever you would call it, called Traitors and Patriots. And it's a reference to a quote that was made, and I can't remember who made it, that said, there are only traitors and patriots now. And I feel like that's what's happened. Yeah. Like we've gotten to a place, and you hit the nail on the head, man, where it's not liberals and conservatives or progressives or Democrats or Republicans, none of that stuff. We have gotten to the point where if you support Joe Biden and whoever else is running the government, you want to decide. I mean, my God, look at this book we were going to talk about in the 7 o'clock with Mark Levin. Democrat Party hates America. Now, whether you agree or disagree with that, does that leave any room for us to come together to defend ourselves? Here's what some folks would say. And you know what? Call in and say it. 303-696-1971. They would say, we're already being invaded. We're being invaded south of the border, and the Democrats don't care about it. They want to see it happen. They're giving up on. Yes, I get it. Their policies suck, and our border is porous, and there's a lot more we can and should do that we haven't done. All true. And I think it would be different if Republicans were in charge. I agree with all that stuff. But does that make them traitors? It's almost like they wake up and say, those people who disagree with me aren't Americans with a different opinion on how to make America great. They are people that wake up and want to destroy my country. Do you believe that? I mean, do you believe in his moments of clarity that Joe Biden is thinking, how can I destroy America? Really?
Yeah, really? That's the motivation. And that's the motivation of the Democrats, that they are trying to tear down this experiment. I'm fascinated by that idea, because it's also the idea of people that say, well, America, love it or leave it. And that is the most asinine and anti-American statement you could ever make, because you're forgetting that one of the gifts of this country is our ability to change. When you're in Russia, China, North Korea, you don't have the ability to enact governmental change. We have it here. The beauty about America is America, love it or change it. You can change it. And the idea that the individuals that are in power, that are on the Democrat side of the aisle, or even the Republican side of the aisle, that they are trying to tear apart that mechanism, I find shocking that we're coming to that conclusion, that that's what we believe, that these people are trying to end this grand experiment. I can't get there, but I think you're right that a lot of people feel that way.
Janet, we got to cut away for a break here, but Janet texts in, this is also, I feel like this could be true. If we had another 9/11, I think there's a significant amount of the population who would blame us and say we deserved it. I think you're right. I think we saw some of that, by the way, even back on 9/11. You could hear people saying, well, we should find out why they attacked us, as opposed to my gut reaction, which is let's find out who attacked us and extinguish them. I mean, that was my thought, but some were like, well, let's find out why they hate us so much, as opposed to you can hate me all you want as long as you don't try to bring down any Americans or the buildings in the process. Listen, we've gone a little bit long on this. Happy to continue to take your texts and your calls at 303-696-1971. Mitch Flory with The Art of Granite. I got to tell you about Big Mitch. Fantastic at what he does. I was in another house this weekend that I thought, these countertops look fantastic. Just the genius of matching them to the cabinetry, which Mitch isn't even the cabinet guy. Mitch is the countertop guy who can say, this looks great. What do you think? And that kind of expertise matched with the wholesale prices, matched with the, oh, by the way, if you say you're a 710 George listener, you also get the bathroom countertop with the kitchen countertop package for free, or the sink for free with any package. Combined all together, you just can't get that anywhere else. Guy isn't looking to make a quick score. He's looking to make a constant source of referral. and a member of the community, give them a call, 303-386-5919, 386-5919, or check them out at theartofgranite.com. That's theartofgranite.com. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com. Imagine
folks. Stick around when we come back in studio. Deputy Chief Steve Redfearn from Boulder, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler with you. We are in that last hour of the show for this Monday, the 11th of September, in studio. And I'll be honest with you, man. We've got a special VIP in here. I thought you were calling in. And so when I heard you were, I was like, this is the best. I just thought, you know, for most people, it's like, I'll just call in and that way you can call from the donut shop or whatever you're doing. We have in studio with us right now. He's the deputy chief of police for a place called Boulder. His name's Stephen Redfearn. Sir, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Good morning.
And I've got them all hooked up, right, Billy? We're all good to go? Great. First off, I think folks probably remember, because we've had you in a couple different times, you were a superhero when it comes to the events of July the 20th, 2012. And I don't need to rehash those things, but you and I were talking off air before we got on here about your time at Aurora and where you were on September the 11th, 2001. You remember that?
I do. Yep. I was in East Texas at the time and got stuck there for a few days.
You were visiting family?
Yeah. My grandparents had a place in East Texas. It was a great place to go and unwind and chill. And we were supposed to go to Dallas and fly home that morning. And my grandpa, very serious Marine, opened the door to my room where I was sleeping. And he's like, you're not going home today. You better come out here. And I thought he was joking. And I walked into the living room right when the second plane hit. And I remember it clear as day.
Yeah. I remember the confusion after the first one hit. At first, all the reporting was like some small plane or something must have gotten off course and some craziness or something. And then by the time the second one hit, you knew, man, that there's something else going on here. It changed everything. You were with Aurora since, you said, 1999.
Correct.
And then for most people like me, I continue to fail upwards. You actually earned your progression. So you became a sergeant. You ended up the events of the Aurora Theater thing took place, and then you kept working your way up. When you finally left Aurora for Boulder Pastures, what was your final rank there?
I retired from Aurora as the division chief of operations, so I oversaw all of the patrol officers. It was about 300 to 400 people under my command there.
That's big.
Yeah, it was
big.
It was big.
The reason I think that's important, though, is you've had the opportunity to see metro area policing in a pretty robust environment where crime was dynamic, it was growing, and it was just very different than it is probably in Boulder. But I thought I'd ask, is it very different than Boulder? Is it a matter of scale? Is it a matter of type, size?
It is, and it's interesting because Boulder, I've been there 2 years now. It seems like it's been yesterday, but Boulder historically doesn't have the violent crime that other areas in the metro have, but we're starting to see it seep in. I mean, we're starting to see some of the issues on a much lower scale, thankfully, than some of the bigger cities, but it's some of the criminal behavior, some of the mental health, some of the drug addiction, same behaviors, different environment, and thankfully smaller scale. But policing is policing no matter where you go in the country. It's just dealing with different dynamics in the community.
Before we get into this plan, which is called the Reimagining Policing Plan, which was recently passed, you told me unanimously by the city council. Before we get into that, though, want to stay current eventsy on another topic, especially when you talk about the cuckoo for Cocoa Puff stuff that goes on in Boulder, and that is the CU Buffs.
Yes.
What have you been able to detect a change in Boulder since the whole prime? And then now they've won these two big games, one on the road, the first home game. We've got CSU coming up this weekend. I'll be there, by the way. I want to make sure that I have your cell phone number just in case things go really badly, because they could.
I'll distribute your photo.
Be on the lookout for this guy. What's it like up there? What was it like up there on Saturday? What are some of the challenges that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's challenges, but it's also really cool. So I worked the Stampede Friday night. I worked the game all day Saturday. It's just a different environment I'm used to policing in. We didn't have any big colleges in Aurora. And it's just neat. There's tons of people. I mean, ton of money coming into town. There was just every hotel was booked. Just a really great vibe. Prime has got everybody super excited, super back in, and they're winning games. So part of us is like, oh, this is really cool. They're winning, but part of us is like, oh no, we don't want to go back to the 90s and the flaming couches flying off balconies at frat houses and all that stuff. So
I was there for that. It wasn't me lighting the couches, but it was me cheering them on as they were thrown off of those different things. That was me, but I wasn't committing the crimes. I was just applauding it.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. When the events of Saturday finished up with the shellacking of the Huskers, one of the things that you got to worry about, and I presume this happens a lot with the major league cities and all this other stuff too, like people are going to set cars on fire and they're going to torch this, like the couches, or did anything happen like that?
No, in fact, the week before was the same thing. The kids were super happy. They're partying. They poured out into the street in the hill, went to the frat houses, had parties, but we had very few issues, minor stuff. We caught a guy burglarizing a bunch of dorms while the game was going on.
Really?
But really with the students, they were overwhelmingly well-behaved, just happy. He had the open containers, the silly things.
Of course.
But overall, we're really actually pleased with how well-behaved everybody's been. We hope it continues.
How unruly are the Nebraska fans?
They were rolling around downtown, and Boulder just...
Is that a comment on their girth?
They were on scooters, most of them. Not like the four-wheel scooters, but the two. Boulder just authorized the two-wheel line.
Oh,
scooter.
yeah.
And so some of them were very quickly rolling around down on the mall yelling, "Go Huskers," but they were going like 20 miles an hour on their scooters. Nobody could catch them.
Did you authorize one free tase per officer of someone wearing red?
Of course not.
No, that's right. You can't see this, but he's winking at me on camera. Like, no, never. Let's get to the big issue at hand, and that is there was coverage, and it was different depending upon where you read the coverage about this reimagining policing plan that got approved by the city council. First off, before we describe it, is it in effect right now?
Yes. And a lot of the things that are in the plan, we've already kind of been doing. This plan has taken 2.5, almost 3 years to come to fruition. And so it's been a work in progress. We just needed council to give us the official okay that they were buying into this plan and letting us go forward.
It looks like maybe a 50-something page plan, at least that the city council had been asked to consider here. And I'm looking at this thing right now. And for whatever reason, they have chosen not to highlight a picture of you on the cover of it. I don't know why they've done that.
That's good.
A lot of other people, including, I believe, the chief. What does it mean to reimagine policing in terms of what Boulder's trying to do here?
Sure. So this thing, the key to this plan is problem solving, problem-oriented policing. And everything has changed since 2020. We know that. And so a big part of this plan was engagement from the community, asking the community what they want from their police department. Boulder's a different animal. Boulder's much different than most cities. And we heard loud and clear that the community told us, hey, what's been going on? What the traditional mechanisms of policing aren't working. We want you to do something different. So it's kind of what we've done with this plan. We've engaged a ton of different stakeholders, tons of different groups in the community.
Well, what was it that they didn't like that you guys were doing before?
So right, wrong, or indifferent, I think after 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, policing changed overnight. It was probably the biggest impactful thing in my career in almost 25 years. And so it was just, for whatever reason, that was the flashpoint of, we've got to change things in policing. Whether we agreed with that or not, we respond to the community. The community says, do things different. And so a big part of that is the community saying, hey, we want you to take more things into consideration other than just throwing everybody in jail. We'll be the first to acknowledge that, yes, there are people that need to go to jail, but maybe we need to look at things a little bit differently and see if there's ways that we can block those opportunities for crime from even occurring. Then maybe we don't have to have that interaction where something goes wrong.
So how does this plan address that? I mean, the way it was billed, or at least reported, billed's probably too strong, but reported in some places was, hey, Boulder moving away from arrests, or Boulder moving towards more hugs or something like that. I can't remember what it was. Yeah, right.
So it really, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to arrest a bunch of people. We're not in a perfect world. And so we will still continue to arrest people. We did an operation on Wednesday in our Central Park area targeting drug dealers. We've had a bunch of overdoses. We arrested 6 or 7 drug dealers in a day. Like, we still are arresting people in Boulder. What we're looking to do is figure out a way, working with the community, working with landlords and business owners and all those people, and problem solve these reasons. And I can think in Aurora, when I started in 1999, there's certain corners on specifically Colfax, I could arrest drug dealers. There were prostitutes. When I left in 2021, that same corner still had those same issues.
Wow.
And
hopefully not the same prostitution, drug dealers, hopefully
maybe
new people.
But my point with that is to go, okay, why is that location conducive to those things? What is it about that location that makes criminals feel comfortable doing criminal things? And so that's a big part of this plan, is figuring out how to prevent crime. And if we do that, we're never going to stop crime, obviously. But if we do that, especially because we have a lot of limitations we never had. Jails are full. The legislature has enacted legislation that hasn't decriminalized things, but has made it where arresting people for things we used to be able to arrest for, we are no longer able to do. And so that's why It's on us to figure out ways to
tell me about where that inability comes from. You said we're no longer able to arrest them. What are those dynamics?
Sure. So post-COVID, the jails, and I don't think it's unique to Boulder, most of the county jails have enacted arrest standards that pretty much it has to be a fairly serious crime for us to be able to take somebody to jail. There's new regulations on PR bonds that require a certain amount of time for low-level offenses. People basically cannot stay in jail for a PR bond. And if you have somebody that's committed 30 low-level offenses in a month, they probably need to spend some time in jail. They're not getting it. We don't have that ability right now. Legislation-wise, 3 or 4 years ago, if we found somebody with meth, fentanyl, crack cocaine, heroin, I'm not talking the drug dealers, I'm talking drug users. If you had a single use amount, as you know, of meth, you would go to jail. It was a felony. Now they get a ticket. They could presumably get 3 or 4 tickets in a day for possessing meth or heroin. Do
they ever get taken to some rehab place? Is that part of the arrows in your quiver, or you guys just don't have the ability to do that?
And this is not unique to Boulder. Colorado in general, this is my personal opinion, does not have adequate mental health and drug treatment resources for people. Judges don't even have the ability to, in most cases, to say, you know what, you're a danger to yourself. I'm going to order you to go to drug treatment. There's, the state mental health hospital is backed up immensely. We saw that we've seen that on high profile cases where it's just taken forever to get somebody competency evaluation. And so many of the people sitting in jail are waiting to go to the state mental health hospital to evaluate competency. So there's just a lot of things that we don't have in our tool belt anymore. And we're the first to acknowledge that, is it a great solution to take the unhoused person that's got an open container to jail? Is that going to really fix the problem? Probably not. We probably kind of wrest our way out of that person's issues, but there has to be recourse to criminal behavior, and we just don't have that as much as we used to.
Those folks that are awaiting a trip down, and I'm not even sure it has to be a trip down to Pueblo anymore. I think they dispatch some of those folks, or at least use some folks in the community, maybe to come up into the jails and do some of these assessments. Is that true?
It is, and whether this is true or not, but the working narrative in Boulder is that some of the best mental health treatment in the county is in the jail.
Yeah, that's nuts. Those guys, while they're awaiting that, are they in jail? Are judges like bonding these people out with some, supervision restrictions and stuff, but on the grounds that, hey, as long as you're willing to cooperate with this process, we'll cut you loose? Or is it like, nope, until you get that evaluation done, you stay right here?
A lot of them do stay in until they get an evaluation. But we're seeing a PR bond issue with people that aren't in on mental health issues. And we had a guy, this is what was widely reported. We had a guy stabbed another guy about two weeks ago in our Central Park in front of our municipal building. He was given a PR bond 2 days later after going in on first-degree aggravated assault, a Class 3 felony.
Based on what?
And I will say this: the DA's office in Boulder vehemently argued for not a PR bond. A judge apparently decided that this person, with their lack of criminal history, even though they just stabbed somebody, deserved a PR bond. They got out. We arrested him last week again while he was out on bond for just acting silly in the park. He had a bunch of over 50 fentanyl on him. Ran from the cops on 2 separate occasions. So
does this dude have the mental health addiction issues, or is this just a bad dude?
I'm not sure on that. It was a younger dude. I don't know where he came from, what his story is, how he ended up in Boulder. But
stabbing someone sounds bad.
It is.
I don't want to be too judgmental too quickly without knowing the circumstances. Of course, there could have been a good reason to stab him. Turns out the judge is willing to roll the dice on the community. Do you see that a lot up there?
Yes and no. It's gotten better. I think part of the problem for a while was the judges were hearing how full the jail was. And I think some of the time the judges were trying to do their part to say they're going to help out the jail a little bit, but it's not helpful when you have somebody that's going to reoffend.
How in the world could you take this reimagining police thing? And you told me something, I'll let you share the numbers, but this actually results in an increase in funding for police. How in the world did you get that by a unanimous vote of the city council up there?
So I think a lot of it was just how we explained how we're going to do it. And by having heavy community involvement, and we had those community members, some of whom aren't historically outwardly fans of the police, they came in and testified that they thought this plan was a good idea because we did involve, this wasn't the police saying, hey, we come up with this great idea, now we're just going to shove it down your throats and you take it. This was huge on community involvement. And I've learned a big lesson through this is that if you want to make some change, you've got to have that community input, or
the buy-in.
This council would have said, I don't see anything from the community here. And they would have said, absolutely not. And so I think because of the overwhelming support we had from many different entities, that they felt compelled to pass it. And our fear was, because it does add more funding and it does add potentially adding more cops, that would be a non-starter for some of our council members, but they all voted to approve the plan.
It also looks like, to your point, that this was a long time coming. This wasn't like hastily put together. Let's have a couple community meetings and move on. Like, there were phases that you went through moving around. And were you part of those? Is that a chief only thing, or how did you guys engage the community on this?
So there was a lot of people involved in this. And actually the main person that ran this plan worked for the city. I can't remember her exact title. She's not a police employee. She worked for another entity in the city, working with many of us in the police department. I was involved in parts of it, other parts I wasn't. We brought in national experts. The reason we asked for more cops and more funding for that was we brought in a guy as a criminologist that came into the staffing study. And he's the one that gave us numbers on how, based on our calls for service, he thinks we should be staffed. We brought in National Policing Institute that came in and did community surveys. And so it was really a heavy lift and lots of people involved. It wasn't just 5 of us sitting around the table going, hey, this is a good idea.
Listen, you've made the mistake of coming in studio. And by the way, thank you for engaging in some level of personal hygiene above Billy and mine. That makes things a lot easier for us. I apologize for us, by the way.
I think the bar is very high.
Can you stick around for another segment? I love having these conversations, especially with someone who's an expert who started at the ground level and worked their way up. We're talking with Steve Redfearn. He is the Deputy Chief of Police for Boulder. This is a very interesting proposal that the city council has gotten behind. I'm still baffled at the fact that you were able to get more funding, more police, and I want to talk about how this thing is going to play out. But I also, honestly, Steve, I want to talk about when the legislature takes certain steps, how it makes things more challenging for Boulder to respond to some of these. And you've touched upon some of them, but not in a critical way. I'm not looking to criticize any specific individual because I'll name them later. No, I'm kidding. I'm just interested to know how a statewide approach to something ends up changing the game for you up in Boulder and what you're seeing up there. And then we'll talk about some other things too. Before I do that, though, I've got to tell you about QC Kinetix. There are pains that you have in your life. Many of them, by the way, unrelated to the legislature. I know that sounds crazy. Those could be in your joints, knees, hips, ankles, elbows, shoulders, whatever it is. If you've reached that age where the warranty has run out on the good parts of you, you've only got a couple options. One is just suck it up and move on. I think that kind of sucks when there's alternatives, but when the alternatives are pills or getting cut open and operated on, running the risk of infection, the long rehab, I'm not a big fan of that either. QC Kinetix, our friends that have been doing this regenerative medicine thing from coast to coast, border to border with huge success, they offer you that alternative. Don't take my word for it. Absolutely do not take my word for it. Instead, go to their website. Q, that's a letter. C is a letter too. Kinetix begins with a K, ends with an X. QCkinetix.com and check them out, but then don't stop there. That's not enough. Pick up the phone and call them at 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986. One last time, 303-900-8986, and stump them. Ask them every question you have. Tell them what your concerns are. Ask them, how can this be true? What makes your product so much better than everything else out there? Ask them for testimonials. They've got all that information. Make them give it to you and then sign up and make the pain go away. Hey, stick around. It's going to be me, the Deputy Chief of Boulder, Steve Redfearn, and you, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy. Why should you buy your next vehicle?
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history with nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher. You'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS in studio. Deputy Chief of Police for the Boulder Police Department, Stephen Redfearn. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Big Steve, let me ask you a couple questions about this. When you have rolled this out and gotten any pushback on this policy, has it been from other law enforcement agencies outside of Boulder? Have you ever had those calls and texts where they go, dude, what are you guys doing out there?
I haven't. I shared this out with people I know in different places, and I've actually, it's a long plan. There's bits and pieces people can take or leave or use for their jurisdiction, but I really do think it's a good plan, and I think I've had a lot of interest of people saying, hey, I'd like to read it. I'd like to talk to you guys about how you came to it. And then I think a lot of it will just be to see how it goes now that it's approved.
If this policy were in existence 2 years ago, over that subsequent 2-year period, would more or less people have been arrested by Boulder PD?
In theory, with this plan, if it works properly, less. And that's not to say that we are letting criminals run rampant. It's saying we are figuring out ways to, especially with repeat criminals, to figure out a way to divert them from committing further crime.
Now, I'm glad you brought up the repeat criminal.
Yeah.
How would you approach it today versus what would have taken place 2 years ago?
So if we have, number one, if we get the staffing that we need, that's a big part of this. So we've had to pull, like many departments, we're down 15 right now. We're authorized 190. The staffing study as part of this plan shows we should be closer to 205. And what we can do with those additional cops is put them back in some of the assignments that we had to strip down after we had the mass exodus like everybody else did in 2020. And so that means more officers on foot patrol and Pearl Street, more officers up on the Hill. We don't have a DUI team anymore. Like bringing some of those teams back that will be able to.
No DUI team?
No, it's a lot of departments. I mean, I know the other departments around here are doing the same thing. They've had to just pull people back to handle 911 calls. I mean, that's 911 calls and detectives. Those are about the two things that if everything else goes away, we still have to have. And so that's a part of it, is having more staffing. But it also, again, this like everybody else, Boulder is using a co-responder team, starting up. It's called the CARES team. It'll be a clinician and a paramedic, diverting those kind of calls that maybe the police shouldn't be involved in, maybe not. We'll evaluate it all and see how it goes. But that all goes to the fact of putting more cops on the street, being able to engage in problem solving, being able to engage in place-based approaches where we're trying to figure out, like I mentioned earlier, why is this gas station compared to all the other 10 in the city a hotspot for crime when the others aren't? And so if we can take away those opportunities for crime, we may not have to arrest as many people.
How much of this involves either new data analysis, or you're just getting new data altogether? I mean, how much of it is focused on that?
It's heavy on data. If you dive into it, you'll see that. And we have his title is Chief Data Analyst. He's a doctor in criminology. He works in our chief's office, and he's a rock star, and he's constantly looking at this. And the staffing study, it didn't just look at the number of calls for service, because if you actually look at our call numbers, they're slightly down, which seems weird, but the complexity of calls is up. I was out on patrol last Saturday night, riding with the shift commander, and there weren't a lot of calls involving drunk college kids, surprisingly, but there were a lot of people fighting the cops, and there were a lot of cops saying, I need emergency cover,
what?
mental illness and drug addiction. And so a call that may have been able to be handled historically by 1 or 2 cops now requires 5 or 6, because we're just seeing such issues with people that are addicted. And then, it's the carrot, the chicken or the egg. Did the addiction cause the mental illness? Did the mental illness cause the addiction, or a combination of both? And we need more cops on individual calls. And that's part of this, is the complexity of the calls. And this researcher looked at that and said, wow, you guys actually are needing more officers on calls that traditionally you may not have you've been able to handle with 1 or 2. So that's part of it as well. Figuring out the right number of cops to handle what we're seeing.
You talked about the trying to divert some of these recidivists. How does having more cops on, let's say the Pearl Street Mall or whatever it is, how does it address the recidivism piece other than through straight up deterrence? Like, hey, we're present, so maybe you want to go steal something somewhere else.
That's a big part of it. But the big part of it too is being engaged with the businesses. A huge part of this was the businesses. The business community is fed up. In fact, we had 35 people come to open comment at council last week when they voted to approve this plan. Many of them were business owners that said, we are so sick of our businesses being victimized. By having more cops down as a deterrent, being able to make more contacts, go talk to people, potentially let criminals know, hey, this is, every time I go down to Pearl Street, I see cops walking around. Maybe I'm not going to commit a crime. You can argue that they'll just go somewhere else, but nonetheless, it's just a matter of the community also feeling like they're safe and they've got a presence of police.
Those stores that are being victimized, are we talking about, hey, burglaries that are taking place when they're closed, or straight up people walking in like we've seen in so many other communities, guys walking in off the street, grabbing some stuff and just taking off?
We're actually Boulder's doing pretty good through some of our initiatives on crime. Some like auto theft, we're down double digits. Burglary, we're down, but we're seeing a lot of the shoplifting, a lot of the crimes while they're open. Business owners shared that they don't like their female employees to walk out of the business alone at night
Wow.
because they get accosted. And so we're not seeing the armed robberies and things that
Yeah.
much like other places. But
Shoplifting?
A lot of shoplifting. And again, you know, how many times can you write somebody a summons?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. What happens with the shoplifter? You guys get called out, you catch a shoplifter. Is it just scratching a ticket? And how many times, as you said, how many times has that happened before it's okay, now you got to go?
Yeah, so they'll get a summons unless for some reason they're just stealing an astronomically high amount of property, which typically it's not. And then we will only be able to arrest them once they have several warrants. That means
warrants.
That means they've had to fail to appear in court numerous times.
Just to be clear, you catch a dude shoplifting, gets scratched a ticket. Later that day, shoplifting, scratched a ticket. Later that day, shoplifting, scratched a ticket. That dude, do you even look at the aggregate amount, or is that even possible anymore? So is there ever a moment at which, short of going to court, getting a court date, and not showing up multiple times, that guy goes to jail?
Probably not for the lower level offenses. And part of that, again, is some of the PR bond legislation that's come out. Again, there's a spectrum of people. So you may have somebody shoplifting that's just trying to grab food for their kids, whatever. It's still illegal.
Sure.
But you may have the serial shoplifter. And so unfortunately, they all get treated the same.
Is there some limit to how many warrants they need to have before the court will finally accept them and keep them in jail with a real bond? Or
so it depends. So if it's a municipal charge for us, if we've written someone if they have 3 municipal warrants, the jail will accept them. And then on the state level, a lot of it isn't necessarily even what the DA is willing to charge. It's whatever the jail standards are at that particular time.
How do you guys decide when to write into municipal versus into state for things like those kinds of property crimes?
It just depends on the level of offense. So the things, open container, the lower level things like that, we have a tent camping ban in the city. Those go to municipal court. Municipal court has actually a ton of diversion services where they try to actually help some of these people, especially that are unhoused, get back on their feet, where state court has a much bigger docket. And so some things like we don't charge shoplifting in municipal court. We don't have a municipal theft ordinance. It goes into state court. So
every shoplift is a state violation. So you're scratching out a state summons for them to go. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So it just depends on the offense.
In terms of the municipal prosecution, do you guys do domestic violence stuff? None of that? All that goes state?
Correct.
A lot of traffic.
Yep.
The DUI's got to go state.
Yep.
What are you seeing with juvenile crime up there? It seems to be a growing issue in Denver and Aurora and maybe everywhere else as well. But what are you seeing in Boulder with that?
Thankfully, we don't. In fact, I can't tell you the last time I can remember a violent crime involving a juvenile up there. We just don't see it like we do in other cities. We don't have the gang issues in Boulder, thankfully. And so most of our major crimes are not committed by juveniles, they're committed by adults.
Some of the most expensive real estate in the metro area is in Boulder. Are you able to buy a mansion up there?
I don't live in Boulder.
Is that, if you could afford it, how much more would the chief have to pay you for you to be able to afford?
I have not researched that. I would love to live in Boulder. It's a beautiful place.
It is. The only time I lived in Boulder were the 7 years that I was going to school there, like Tommy Boy, you know, but that was all in that ridiculous apartment living right around the campus where if you're looking to stop crime, that's a good place to start looking. I'm telling you, those CU college kids. Before we get back to our interview, speaking of real estate, let me tell you that that real estate market out there is crazy. I just saw an article in the Wall Street Journal that said, hey, the decrease in housing prices may be over. I'm like, over? I mean, interest rates continue. What are we, 7.5% or something like that? Scarcity is still an issue. If you are in a position where you have to, or you know what, get to make a decision about getting out of your house and into that dream house, there's a whole lot of options out there. None of them as good as Gabe Ribble and the Empower Home team at Keller Williams. Gay has been doing this forever. And by forever, I mean decades, right here in the metro area. She knows what's happened in the past, and that makes her a good predictor of the stuff that's going on right now and how to deal with it in the future. You find out everything you can about real estate, not by just hanging out on the internet at random sites. Go to gayhasthebuyers.com, is how you spell gay, hasthebuyers.com, because she does 14,600 of them. They've sold more homes than others. They sell for more money than others. They sell faster than others. If there's another metric that you think matters in real estate, maybe it's trust, that's okay. They'll throw in the guarantee that they'll sell your house in the time and for the dollar amount you want, or they make it right with money. Give them a call at 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD. Can I ask you, Deputy Chief, about some of the stuff that's come out of Boulder that trickles down here and becomes fodder for talk radio and other policy conversations? Is there had been this effort to ban AR-15s and those kinds of rifles and stuff like that. Is that a big deal up in Boulder? Do you come across those a lot up there? Or is this, I'm not asking you to comment on whether it's good or it's bad, but is that an issue in Boulder?
So obviously we had the mass shooting in 2021.
From a dude who's not from Boulder, by
correct.
the way. Yeah.
High profile. That was perpetrated with the long gun. I don't recall specifically what type, but it was a long gun. We see a decent amount of recoveries of firearms. Typically, it's people that are leaving guns in their cars, somebody that's going around breaking into cars or even unlocked cars. Then they have a gun on them when we contact them. For the most part, we don't, like what I was used to seeing in Aurora, we don't take a lot of rifles off the street, thankfully. But we do have a decent amount. Sometimes it's rare, but like last October, we had some dudes come up from the Denver area, try to go crash some frat parties. Didn't go well, cranked off some rounds. And so usually when we're actually having, we had an officer involved shooting last October involving some guys that weren't from Boulder up on the hill. Most of our firearm crime is perpetrated by people that aren't from the community. They come up there to
import it,
do something.
Yeah. When someone is arrested, either trespassing a vehicle, stealing a vehicle, they have a gun or not, is that an arrest?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay,
typically that's an arrest.
And what do you see in the courts do up there?
So we have a great partnership with our DA. Michael Doherty's fantastic. They get it. They work very well with us. And so they're great partners. And even if it's not the most serious crime that they've seen, if we have somebody that's a serial offender, we communicate with them daily and say, hey, this guy's coming to court tomorrow. Please do what you can to keep him.
Yeah.
And they're really good about it. And so the serious, I definitely don't want to portray the impression that serious crime is not taken seriously in Boulder. It really is. And we're seeing people stay in jail that need to stay in jail.
Okay, good.
But it is some of the more frustrating things that are kind of either that in between where they're heading towards being serious or just a problematic person that hasn't yet risen to that level, that sometimes, in our opinion, needs to be diverted somehow. And if the only mechanism to do that is jail, then we want to see them go to jail if they need to go to jail.
Well, there are a lot of harm reduction advocates, whatever the hell that term means, that will say for people that have drug addiction or these other issues that you can't force them into rehab. It'll never be successful until they come to it. And that becomes the basis for saying locking them up isn't the way to do it. I don't agree with that from the standpoint that there's got to be some stick. It can't all be Carrick. It can't all be, we'll just keep Narcaning you and reviving you until you decide you want to change your life.
Well, it's interesting because if you look at, especially when it comes with our unhoused community, people try to want to be compassionate. Okay, great. If someone goes to jail for 90 days and they're drug addicted, there's a likelihood that when they're out after 90 days, they're not addicted to drugs right now. They get kicked out the back door and probably go right back to the environment that they came from. So how can we as a community have somebody to meet them there at the day they come out of jail to go, hey, we're going to take you somewhere now that you're sober and we can divert you so you're not going right back into the environment that you got in trouble in the first place. Things like that. But we've got to have better services. That's the thing. Like until that happens, there's very few mechanisms to get somebody out of that cycle of mental illness, drug addiction, and crime.
I teased you and the listenership here with this question that I wanted to finish with, and that is when the legislature reconvenes, it feels like criminal justice is always one of the top couple issues that they try to tackle. Yep. I mean, my God, we lead the country in car theft, and we're a top 5 in we're top 5 in recidivism coming out of prison and all this other stuff. Without being an advocate for or against, and I'm not trying to turn you into a political person on this, from a policy standpoint. We'll do that off air. I'm asking you to speak on behalf of the chief and ridiculing several members of the legislature. No, I'm kidding. What are some of the things that the legislature does that makes it more challenging for you and the folks in the police department to be effective in the community?
So that's a good question. And I don't know. Policing shouldn't be political. It really shouldn't.
Agreed.
We get drawn into it just based upon the world that we're living in. But I work with the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police. We have a legislative committee that we're looking at every piece of legislation that comes out. We have SMEs that look at all that, and we offer feedback on almost every bill that has anything to do with criminal justice. What we really like is thoughtful conversations with our legislators. We have those on occasion. Depending on which jurisdiction, we'll have that chief, hey, can you reach out to this elected and talk about the potential hazards of whatever this bill is, or can we add this thing? I will say that we do get met in the middle on occasion. We've had some of the legislation that's come out has changed significantly from the first draft to when it actually gets enacted. It may not be perfect, but there has been some meet in the middle. We want to see more of it. We want to see community members listen to as well. When they go down and testify and 30 people testify about something, you name it, but if it involves criminal justice, we would just love some more involvement. We'd love more of a seat at the table. During legislation season, every Thursday, there's chiefs at the Capitol. They sit up in the rotunda and just try to have good interactions with legislators, talk about these issues. And so we want more tools. We want more ways that we can protect the community. And at the end of the day, that's what we're paid to do. And sometimes that's taken away from us, whether we like it or not. And so at least if something comes to fruition that isn't helpful to us, at least if we are engaged in the process, it feels a little bit better. At least if we're able to share how we think this affects our community. That's it at the end of the day, is just being able to, we hear every day, emails, phone calls, Facebook, you name it, from our community about the problems they're experiencing all day long. And we share those. We try to share those. That's all we can do.
What's that tool? If you had in years, I'm asking you to speak for you as
Sure.
a guy who's been doing this now since 99. I've done simple public school math. That feels like 24 years.
So 50 is what it feels
like. It adds up to 24, I think. 24. What's that tool? If there was one of many, not that answers everything, but that gives you the ability to make a huge impact to better the community.
Yeah, it's twofold. It's one, we still have to hold people accountable. If someone is victimized, that's what we have to remember. We're focused on the offender, which in many cases we should try to figure out why are they offending and what's their issue that we can maybe solve for them. But we got to look at the victim. Every one of those crimes has a victim behind it, and sometimes we forget about that. And then number two, if it's not a scenario where we necessarily need to throw them in jail and throw away the key, if you're going to make legislative changes, they should be followed up with mental health, drug addiction, putting money where it needs to go. To perfect scenario, we make an arrest for somebody who does something wrong and they never offend again, because through the process they get diverted into mental health or drug treatment or whatever their issue is, and then they come out actually rehabilitated.
Yeah, listen, there's an organization out here. This is my segue, Steve, into a live read. There's an organization out here called Sept Denver. I don't know if you know them. They used to be Step 13, been around for decades. And what makes them special is twofold. One, they don't take any taxpayer money at all. They do it all just through donations and people that donate their truck, RV, or all that stuff, their motorcycle. And by the way, Billy, we need to set that up. I've got that damn car in front of my house just waiting to be donated. I told Billy I've got one. I'm going to donate it to them. But what they do is provide a safe and sober and structured place for men to come and get back on their feet when they're ready to make that change. I want to tell you that they have a 100% success rate, but anyone that's dealt with addiction knows that's fake. That is 100% fake. But what they do is I said doo-doo, forgive me. What they do is to provide an opportunity for these men who are committed to it to get back on their feet and transition all the way to self-sustainability and being free, functioning, good members of the community. And you just can't offer more than that, especially without all the strings that are attached to all the taxpayer provided stuff. So here's the deal. For a free tow, and I need it, hassle-free, call them 303-296-9020, 303-296-9020, or you can visit them at stepdenver.org. That's denver.org. Deputy Chief of Police Steve Redfearn, man, you can stick around. We've got a couple minutes when we come back. I can let you have your final words.
Sure.
It could be by way of resignation if you want. I'm not asking you to. You're doing great work up in Boulder. Hey, stick around. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here. Final segment of the show on the George Show 710 KNUS. Can't leave till I tell you about a hero out there fighting for the little guy and the little gal. That's a guy named Dan Caplis. He and his partner Bobber Wahid have for a long time now. I've known Bobber since I did his very first trial in Arapahoe County in front of Judge Wheeler back in, good Lord, 2005, 2006. He's been fighting with Dan in a good way, not fighting against Dan, but with Dan, for victims of people's negligence, their recklessness, their intentional conduct. If you have a righteous case, they're the right guys for you. You just got to give them a call, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or check them out at dancapluslaw.com. That's dancapluslaw.com. Steve Redfearn, he's the deputy chief for Boulder. I hosed you out of, I got like 35 seconds I can give you to talk about an important piece called officer wellness.
Yeah. So a big part of this plan, and we realize it is, the plan's only as good as the people implementing it. And a part of this is making sure that we have the right resources for our employees, not just cops, dispatchers, everybody. It's been a crazy time. It's probably been the toughest 3 years in policing that, anybody remembers. People have been around a lot longer than me. And we sometimes forget in the noise that it's our people out there every day that are still doing this job, and that we got to take care of them. We owe it to them to make sure we provide the proper resources. That's part of this.
I know you had talked about even going through your own internal struggle about, hey, do I keep on doing this? I'm glad you did. Keep it going. Appreciate it. Up there in Boulder. Go Buffs. If you get a text sometime during the game, you'll know that I drank too much. Okay. That's probably it right there. Steve Redfearn, Deputy Chief of Police. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow with Sherry Pife and Carissa Hessick. She's going to talk to us about why plea bargaining sucks, or does it? George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Up here. We're not really in charge. We're just sort of managing the expensive time.